All right, hey, what's up, you guys? How's it going? Welcome to a new live stream. We're gonna be doing a art stream session for tonight. A little bit of training, actually, just for a bit of exercise on drawing. So if anybody wants to join in with me, you're more than welcome to. For people that come in live, you'd be welcome to obviously ask questions and such. Let that focus a little bit right there. Just for information about the tools we'll be using today, it's just a sketchbook that I kind of carry around for my everyday use, which I'll share a bit more later on. And then, of course, I also use my Sakura PIGMA pen. So if anybody has any questions, pertaining to some of the things in art or design, or just suggestion or questions pertaining to that, you're more than welcome to ask. So we'll see if anybody actually joins in, and we'll get this going. So let me just double check real quickly if, as long as the stream is working okay. I just want to make sure that that's all right. Give me 1 second. Move back down again. Cool. So of course, as always, I'll be doing this. I'm going to try for once a week at the moment if we go for it. It's one of those situations where it's more based on timing, schedule, all that kind of stuff. So we'll see if we can keep this going for the rest of whatever number of weeks if I can. I've been trying to do some of the actual meetup during the Fridays as well for cards and coffee. But of course, that's not what everybody's always looking for at times. So it's nice to be able to give a little bit of options as to like what other things I can give, especially when it comes to like streams and whatnot. So yeah, looks like we're running fine. Okay, cool. So we're gonna be just sketching here a little bit. I went with the horizontal format. This sketchbook that I'm using right now is like this kind of rag paper that I bought. It's been a little bit, a couple of months ago, sometime last year. And this type of paper is more like a, not really hot press or cold press, not even watercolor paper really. It's just like handmade paper, which has a really rag edge to it. So a lot of fibers in this thing. So some of the sketches that kind of go in here, this is from starting of last year. So you can kind of see how a lot of stuff varies in this. This particular sketchbook I keep mainly because it's my more randomized sketchbook where I just kind of put whatever I want in here. I have another book which is more of that nature journal I've been doing on my Instagram if anybody follows it. I've also been doing commissions on watercolor paper separately. But this one is a rag tooth paper that I just kind of draw whatever I want to essentially on. So I normally carry multiple sketchbooks and I rotate through them depending on the situation of what I want to draw, what I want to create, but also sometimes based on the medium as well. So I'm kind of flipping through these quickly, but just to show you guys an idea how some of the sketches look like in here. Like I said, some of this stuff is like studies. Sometimes it's also like characters that I enjoy drawing or painting. Or even things just like my own personal studies or such. So it varies quite dramatically. So I'll be using this one in particular. I don't know if I'm going to do watercolor on it just yet. We'll see. It's a possibility. Depends on time. But I'm hoping to do at least a detailed watercolor, not watercolor, but an ink drawing piece like this one. It's going to be an exercise that you guys are welcome to join in on. So anybody who's hanging out here right now, if you guys want to sketch, I actually have a challenge. The challenge is one exercise that I really like giving a lot in my classes sometimes. There was a class that I taught called the dynamic sketching. Well, that's the first one, but it's one that came afterwards, which is dynamic posing. So it's posing and staging class. We called it Viscom 2. Viscom 1 was dynamic sketching. Viscom 2 is where we got into like figurative work and drawing characters. And the characters that we had were, based off of models that we look at in front of us. And one of the exercises I would give, if you're going to draw with me today, is an exercise on two figures interacting with each other. And that action is of arm wrestling. And I found that particular exercise of two figures arm wrestling to be quite challenging. And I would throw in these kind of exercises in classes once a week or so, and we would just draw, warm up during this class. So if you guys want to sketch a little bit, we're going to be doing a theme of arm wrestling. Now, the reason why this one is difficult, a couple of potential problems, which is of course drawing the figure, and then of course drawing the two figures coming, in contact with each other. Scale becomes an issue, right? Drawing the two figures in the same realm of size within the space they live in. Also, the table that they're going to be on top of, and then of course trying to find the camera angle I want to put them on. Ideally, you guys would want to sketch it out, like thumbnails, like multiple different thumbnails, trying to figure out what shot, angle, action, pose you want to go for. Here, we're just going to go for it. I have an idea in mind in terms of where the camera is being fixed. I don't want it to be a direct side view. I want it to be turned a little bit to the left, where you have the guy on the left-hand side pulling more, and the guy on the right kind of straining a little bit. So I'm going to give him an expression of kind of like a very strained expression, but I'm going to mechanize them also too. So they're going to be human, but I'm going to give them like mechanical arms. I'm inspired by this one scene in Battle Angel Alita. It was the graphic novel comic that I had read when I was much, very young, in my early high school years and stuff like that. And there was a scene where Alita is arm wrestling. Jashugan is one of the characters in this, and a couple other mech kind of characters. And it was very memorable to me because I just thought it was a really interesting, just in terms of like how the mech designs were done with the arms and stuff like this. That they were like really well established into the story. Just the world building aspect of it. It's one of my favorites in terms of a manga. But we're just gonna be just two regular dudes, but I'm gonna mechanize them. I'm just gonna go straight in there with pen. Let me zoom in a little bit first, so you can kind of see at least how it sets up and builds. Just a little bit closer. Get the camera to focus. There we go. So right now I'm just establishing his head at the moment. We'll take this a little bit slow in the beginning because this is a difficult shot to draw, and I want to make sure it's set up properly. Of course, I will take questions here and there, and I'll try to answer them the best I can. Please always understand that I am here just to have a conversation, chat, talk, and anything I mention or talk about is always based on my opinions and thoughts and whatnot. So, let's see. I'm going to put his shoulder over here. Okay, I'm going to make it his body bare so that way you can kind of see some of the mechanics popping out. So I'm going to give his arm, his left arm here, a very mechanical look structure. Destiny is asking, do I know Eric? He's your prospective instructor at Art Center. Yeah, I know Eric. Great guy. Awesome instructor. And for anybody who's joining late at night here on the West Coast, welcome. For those of you that are getting up early in the morning for whatever place you are coming from, again, it's great to have you guys here. Like I said, I'm going to take it a little bit easy on speed on this one because I really want to kind of figure out exactly where I want this stuff to be placed in. Usually with the mechanical things, I don't quote for like a lot of crazy details just yet. I just want to establish where things go based on form and shape. So I kind of use the human anatomy as an aspect of like building mechanics. Things like muscle groupings, I turn them into like plates. Any articulation and joints, I turn those into like pistons and gears and wires and stuff like that. Alright, let's see. Put his shoulder down here. See if there are any questions here. Nope, no one else. Okay, cool. Once I get more questions, I'll reply to them as I go. But right now, I'm just kind of deep in thought at the moment in terms of like where everything will be fixed in position. I kind of want his body to pull a little bit to his direction. His arm's going to be pulling up here. The other guy's going to be straining. His arm's going to be out a little bit, not having as much leverage. But I want his arm to be like busting up a little bit, as if like sparks or parts and pieces like popping off from all that strain. He's going to be hugging that table real close. Let's bring it up this direction. There's going to be, obviously, he's going to be on top of some padding over here. Let's go this direction. Did I watch One Division? Yeah, I did. It was great. I enjoyed it quite a bit. At first, of course, like everyone else, is trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And so you're watching all these sitcoms, and which I didn't mind. I found a lot of them to be quite good in terms of how they did some of their art direction and how they matched up to, um, you know, the inspirations of some of the shows they were pulling from. It was great to be able to actually watch it so naturally progress, timeline wise as well too. I like stuff like that a lot. Uh, I really enjoy stories where they have backdrops like that when it comes to like timeline or culture or history, and it's evolving around them. Kind of like the show Wonder Years. I don't know if anybody remembers Wonder Years, but when you watch the entirety of that seasons as it goes through, and you grow up with those characters, you see the world around them change with different notable events in history. The years as they change, their costuming, their clothing is changing with it. I always thought it was pretty subtle and really well done. There's several other shows that do stuff like that, where they'll integrate, again, history and culture, where it slowly evolves and changes with time. So his arm's gonna come up in that direction. He's gonna be turning inwardly, so the other guy's arm's gonna be pulled. Here, the thumb out. And his arm's gonna be strained that direction. His other arm's gonna come this way, shoulder down this direction. So it's actually the other hand, the arm is gonna be down here as he's holding on to the handle. The table's going to come out this direction. I think I'll make both of his arms mechanical on this guy, as if he's been overworked with a bunch of stuff. This guy's arms and his shoulders going to be up here. Pad there. Table's going to come out to about here. Let's couple questions. Does anyone here prefer? Oh, that's someone else, not me. Lasuin asks, how many hours a week do you recommend drawing? How long per day, in your opinion, including studies and exercises versus drawing for fun and ideas? This is a question again we get quite often, and I'm sure you have. If you have watched any of the live streams in the past, may have heard iterations of stuff like this. I'll answer it briefly in terms of like my thoughts and opinions on it, and in no way is it necessarily like an answer in terms of like how you should really work. And again, most of the stuff I said in the past has always been usually in that way where, again, it is just a recommendation in terms of like how I would do things. But in terms of like how many hours or in a week you would recommend drawing, I mean you can maximize it and try to pull off as many as possible. Like what is that? Like is that single like 70% of the day where I'm just drawing nonstop? Well, I mean not necessarily. If I compare to let's say like an art center student, so there might be a couple of art center people here possibly right now. I don't know. And if there are, it might give you guys context. But based on let's say an experience of seeing some of the students working at art center in the last couple of number of years, the average student is probably going to pull, especially around midterm and beyond, that would have up to like 4 classes a term session, if not more. And if they're pushing hard, probably upwards of 60 to 100 hours in a week. So you're working, if you're doing a day-to-day job, which is a 40-hour week, add a couple extra hours onto those per day, then you're probably going to be pushing quite hard. But that's if you're like in, let's say, midterm mode, final mode. In the beginning of the term, you'd be kind of like more relaxed, 40-hour periods, maybe less would be okay. If you're pulling between 20 to 40 hours in a week, I would say you're kind of working on a regular like weekday session as a full-time person who's working in the office. If you kind of compare it to that, where I think having at least some sort of comparison to the real world would probably be helpful. But at the same time, I think that's also a little bit dangerous because if you're trying to learn at the beginning and you're trying to put those numbers against you without really having built the endurance for it, then you're not going to probably perform very well. So it's probably best that you kind of have it a little bit more eased into this, you know. In the beginning of it, I'd probably do, you know, like I said, a little bit less if possible. But of course, even though I say that, that's not going to be the case. More than likely, you're actually going to push probably a lot harder in the beginning. What I read in like colleges or universities, places like Art Center, is that usually in the first term, and people who are not Art Center, you can just kind of like compare it to your own schooling. But usually the first term is when you push the hardest. Where you actually strain really hard because you're excited. It's invigorating. It's a new location. You're meeting new people. You're excited. All that stuff. I just said that. But either way, because of all this excitement, you're going to want to push as hard as you can to perform to the best of level, to, you know, for whatever reason it may be. So usually the first term is actually, it goes by the fastest. Your first year at Art Center or any other school potentially would be relatively an uphill climb. But that first term, that first, let's say, semester from another school, or first, I don't know, quarter from another school. Either way, how the system is, no matter how it's built, usually that first session will be the best performance. Not really the best performance, you'll feel the less tiredness. You'll be able to actually push as hard as you can and be able to keep up. By the second term, you're able to keep that up because you introduce new classes and you're going through. I would say by the third and fourth term is when people hit a wall. You know, they hit that wall a little bit. That burnout kind of happens. You're starting to find that the directions that you're going into, you're kind of unsure of. It's like, is this, you know, what I really want to do? It's like, or even then, you don't really know what options there are out there. Maybe there's not enough support system, not enough people to talk to. So you feel a little bit lost, usually around that time. After third term, going to fourth term. Once that kind of happens, there's that period where that term to two, like, not term to two, but term or two, from fifth term to sixth term, tends to be quite rough for a lot of people. And that tends to be the time when you either will change and transition into your focuses of what you want to go for, or you don't move at all. You stop. You know, maybe you do something else. You leave. And that's a possibility. But usually, again, if some of the students are working up to that point, again, like I said, they're going to be working quite dramatically hard. But you put it on yourself. You know, Art Center is not asking you to do this stuff. You're there because you're going to want to work that hard. Any school you go to, what you put into it, you're going to get out of it. So it doesn't have to be Art Center. You can go to any school, and you are willing to then, if you're willing to work that hard, you will put those many hours into it. But I still think it's important that you recognize that there's that there should be a safety line, or at least a threshold somewhere that you should try to be careful of not crossing. And I use this analogy a lot of the times also. It's much like in physical exercise or something like that. Rest is highly important. You know, if you don't have a moment to absorb or to at least recoup and bring up that excitement and energy back up again, to keep pressing for hours and hours and hours each day, there's no point really, because you lose just as much as you gain. You know, so really you don't move at all. You might think, well, I'm pushing so many hours in a day, I should be able to grow, and you will. But as soon as you burn out, as soon as you hit that wall, you will lose all that momentum. You'll lose potentially that muscle memory. You'll lose everything you had gained prior. So you take one step forward, you kind of take a bit, 2 steps back a little bit. So you end up kind of going back into step one again, or slightly, it feels like before, even behind that, and you feel like you have to start over. And that's a very defeating feeling, you know. So that's always, you have to be very careful in those situations. But like I said, if there was like an actual hard number, those are the numbers you're looking at when it comes to actual colleges and schools. And those are the school numbers that you should be comparing to, because that is your competition, you know. So if you're self-educating and you're trying to get out there to work into the industry, and if you need to compete, well, you got to compete with people that are in actual universities, and they're putting themselves in that pressure cooking environment to work as hard as possible. If you're working on your own, and if you're not willing to sacrifice those hours, you're not going to do as well. But that doesn't mean just because you put a lot of hours into it that you're guaranteed a gain of any type, you know. So it's about a combination of working hard and smart at the same time, recognizing certain things about that kind of stuff, about yourself, about your abilities, and being mindful that pushing only hard is not going to be the best way to gain. Moments of being able to rest and being able to find a good community and also a right environment with people to kind of keep pushing is really the key thing aspect of it. I may have missed a bunch of questions because people made a bunch of comments. So here's something I've been struggling with recently. Is asking from Noodle, and I don't know if this has been answered already. You have a severe worrying difficulty translating what I see to the paper. Guess not. You're guessing it's not it's deconstructing a 3D shape correctly is a part of the problem. What you think it is. Do you have any tips on how to tackle this? Well, I mean, again, if you're on your own doing this, searching for those answers can be difficult because there's no one there to really give you ideas or thoughts about how it feels in 3 dimensions. Now you can look at it and compare it to other things, right? Other art and other kind of pieces, and it gives you a sense about how good you are about transferring the information over to the 2D paper. But at the end of the day, of course, it's not even just about the way it looks, but of course how it feels putting it out there. If there's a lot of like resistance and difficulty of actually processing even that simplicity of form into it, there's a combination of many things that are going on, which is potentially the actual subject itself. It could be the fact that you don't understand how to actually build those forms accurately well enough, which means you need to build more primitive forms. It could be also the tools. It could be various amount of things. And so there's no way to really pinpoint one thing out. It just takes a lot of time to hone in and balance on all those aspects. But I would say a big aspect first, maybe the key thing to kind of question initially to kind of adjust on might be actually the subject. So if you choose something to draw and you find it to be incredibly difficult to process, I would say switch it up a little bit. Start with something that's familiar in the beginning. Start with something that you actually like drawing, even though you might think, but I've drawn it so many times. But it's a good way to warm up. It's a good way to just start. So as you start and you get an understanding of how to just put the stuff on the page, you're starting to visualize some things, then move into another drawing that might be a bit more challenging. And from there, it might give you the proper and necessary warm up to be able to get into something like that. But if you feel that strain of even just trying to figure out how to actually move your steps forward, again, stepping away from that a little bit, looking at it from a different angle, possibly, maybe because you're going into much detail. There's so many variable things, and I don't know exactly what's exactly going on because as you say it, I don't know what those actual problems are. You're just you're saying that based on words here, you're worried about the difficulty translating that stuff onto paper, but that worry is potentially unfounded. It's probably just your thoughts, your brain telling you this is not working, it's not looking good, this is not correct. So in actuality, it could be also just fine. You could be working appropriately, but you are second guessing yourself. You're doubting your ability. You're doubting your potential learning process. Even if it's not perfect, of course, I'm not saying it would be because you're still learning. But even then, it's important that you recognize when it's not working and also when it is working. Can you discern that thing, right? Or is it only just negative for you? Is it like every aspect of it, from line, the shape, and form, and subject, you feel like it's always a struggle? And that can be very much a case, and that's why we work hard to overcome those things. But you also have to recognize when that transition happens where you feel more confident in those areas. But if you can't look at it from that end, then you'll always look at it as a negative aspect that you have to constantly work on. Then it's very defeating as a feeling, like I said. I don't know if that makes sense, but give that a thought in terms of that aspect. Don't overthink it either. The idea is to just draw as much as you can, and you'll get bits and pieces of it. There's never a moment where all of a sudden you wake up and you feel like I have everything I need in terms of the mental process of you building your skills or hand-eye coordination or something like this. It's such a gradual shift and growth that you don't even recognize when it's happening when you actually get a better handle of it. It's only when you look back, let's say months from then, right? Months from now, that you're able to see the actual outcomes of that growth. So you have to be patient and not worry so much about it, which is easy for me to say. But somebody was asking about fantasy guy or sci-fi guy. Both. I like fantasy and sci-fi. Sci-fi fantasy too, also. What were my thoughts in the UFC this past weekend on the wins and losses in the late knee? Oh no, it's alright. I don't mind questions and comments and conversations that are unrelated to art. I did watch the fight this last Saturday. I was watching it for Izzy. And also fighting Jen, the Polish guy. I was a little bit unsure about his transition of trying to compete in the light heavyweight. I know he's fought heavier guys, I believe, but still, the guy is, I think, what, 20 pounds heavier than he was or something like that, which is a big difference in fight. So just from being on top of him, was a big part of the movement in the fight and how it like got into his side. If it was only striking and standing up, then maybe. But the fact is that he was able to take him down a couple of times, and that's really where the actual game was. And with any bit of extra weight on you, I can imagine it being incredibly tiring. The whole late knee thing with Aljamain, well, that was ridiculous too. I mean, it sucks the fight went that way, and I can tell that he probably wasn't. Well, he was, not very fond of it. People I know criticizing about the whole thing about he was overacting or something like that, but he was actually kneed in the head quite hard. I'm sure it didn't, feel very good, but it is what it is. I think they should have called the fight, and I don't think he should have gotten the belt. But I think they should have said it was maybe another reschedule, another fight. There should have been, no wins or losses. It's just one of the unfortunate situations where somebody could also be injured severely, and it was an accident, like a headbutt kind of thing in boxing, But should somebody get a belt from that? Yeah, again, it's argument. Well, if I ever see you in India, I'll give you an autographed sketch. This is from Debargia. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? Of course. Who hasn't? Who hasn't felt like the things that you pursue and the things that you put out there are not true? That you're essentially kind of like faking a lot of the things, or even the things that you say in the moment you feel confident about, but then later on you think back, it's like, do I actually really, I guess, come off that in a way where it actually backs it up. The things that I actually do really are as I see it or think of it in the moment, There's always that moment where you kind of look back at yourself and other things you've done, or even maybe you're doing right now, and you kind of worry about, like, whether or not you're actually able or capable of doing the things you say. There's always that question of like, why would they choose me, kind of thing too. When I get requests or job hires or commissions and stuff like this, like, well, are the things I'm going to do will they actually like it? Even like right now, I could be speaking to you guys and I can wonder, it's like, do these people actually even want to listen to me? Why are you actually here? Am I actually valid in the things I'm saying? Do I really know what I'm talking about? Do the things I say make sense? It's a valid worry that I think all people would have, that I do also have. But the difference is, does it stop me from pursuing it? No, it doesn't. Because the feeling of me enjoying doing this, talking to people, outweighs that worry. Where for other people, it can be the other way around. It doesn't matter how much enjoyment you might have, the concern, or like at least the anxiety and the stress, outweighs that part. So for me, it's flipped the other way around. There is still stress, and there can be anxiety, and there can be worry, but it would never ever stop me. I think a part of it is recognizing that, and if anything else, I've said it in the past, embracing it more. The more and more you do it, what happens is that you start to seek it more. You start to, I guess, try to put yourself into that mode more and more because of its challenge, but because there are also certain releases, and even sometimes chemically, like you feel that endorphin going up, that adrenaline, and also the kick of actually doing something in front of people. At first it's kind of scary, and as you get into it, you start to feel the energy behind it. It's a little bit addictive actually too. But at first it's a huge kick to the stomach, and you get that butterfly, like, man, what do I say, and how do I respond, and what do I draw, and where do I go, and you wonder, man, what if I mess this up and I look really bad, and if it goes on live and people are watching right now, it's now on the internet, So if I do a horrible job on this thing, man, that means my image will be tarnished. So it's always about the image, right? How I come off. But then I step back and like, well, so what? I could care less, really. And because I'm enjoying drawing this stuff, right? And so if it doesn't come out exactly as I want it to, it's not gonna hold me back in any way. Let's put his leg over here. This guy's leg is gonna be under this direction, and he's gonna be bracing himself back over here. I'm going to move the cameras around a little bit here once I get more of the image necessary. Let's see, a couple of questions. Should people really go to art school? I've been in a small workshop that teaches entertainment design but only has 2 instructors. Is there a greater benefit to attending an actual school? I'm sure there are people here that can also give you recommendations and thoughts about that for people that are actually in these kind of schools, wherever they may be in certain countries or whatnot. For myself personally, and this is speaking on my own experience, so please understand that my experience would not be your experience, but I will say that from what I had gone through was a huge aspect of my success, because without that experience of being in an actual school, I would not have been able to get to where I am now. So why is it the case? Is it the education? Not necessarily. I mean, the education you're getting right now at that workshop, you can probably get, like I said, anywhere from universities and also individual classes or mentorships, online schools. It's information is out there, so it's not like some mystery of how to draw in certain techniques or whatever the case may be. But the big aspect about educating yourself through, let's say, a certain school or platform, whatever it means, if it's a physical location or an online location, is the benefit of actually being around people. That's the crucial aspect, For me, that was everything. Because the friends that I made, the lifelong friends, to the instructors that I had, those were the things that I gained huge amounts of, which you can't create that kind of scenario or environment through an online situation to a degree, but also if you're working on your own, right? As to like small little workshops here and there. If you're at a school, let's say for a certain period of time, 3-4 years, and you are then moving with those people, your friends, brothers and sisters in arms, through this war of trying to educate yourself, the ties that you create, but also the back and forth of being able to recognize where you stand. The comparison is important. So if you're just by yourself, only looking at things online, like social media, you start to get a very distorted view of things, in my opinion. And it's not necessarily even healthy either, too. It doesn't stimulate this kind of sense of growth and confidence. So I think it's actually important that you experience stuff like that with an actual school, which I think only a physical location gives to you. Nothing beats just being next to somebody to watch how they draw or work or be able to have a conversation. Yeah, we can have like online meetings and live streams and stuff like this, but it's not the same, still not the same. I can't read your guys' body language. I can't read your facial expressions. I can't recognize how you are as an individual and personality. All I read is reading words, and I can't sometimes even read the context to things or how you are saying them. So it's very one-sided. These are just questions, I know, but in a situation where you're trying to build a community or get a sense of yourself and build things like networks and friendships, you need to be there with them. Now, right now, of course, it's kind of difficult to do so, but at the same time, in the future, at some point when things do become a lot better, who's to say that we won't be able to go back into classrooms and stuff like that, which I'm sure we will. The world is changed already, though. Education has now permanently changed. The idea of schools and education is still going to be around, but it's not going to have the same weight as it has had, from decades and decades ago. Just from the last year, it's completely changed the landscape of education, especially within what we do, art and entertainment design. Because people are starting to find that we can get this kind of education much cheaper from different locations. But as I said, there is a missing factor there still, which is that community and building of a network of people. You can find it online, but it takes a lot more of your proactive effort to do so and maintain that kind of connection. When you're at, let's say, a physical school and you're signing up for a class, you're going in there every single day and week, and you see them person to person. So, like I said, that's, I would say, the main aspect of why having that kind of experience really is kind of key. Because when you start to work, again, you're working in a studio or you're working with other people, and so having that kind of like experience of working in a kind of a closed environment with people around you is part of that training. Because training is not only technical, not just how well you draw and paint. It's about how you speak. It's about how you communicate. It's about how you actually interact with groups and individuals around as a studio space. And so knowing how to compromise, but also knowing how to stand up for yourself, those are all key things to learn as an individual, as a person as well, which can then elevate your positions because you're able to stand not only just from the abilities of things that you can express on, but also being able to, basically, I don't know, have the sense of confidence of the things that you're actually trying to go for. Because it can show in your work, of course, but sometimes people look at the work and they may not be artists, and they can't read a lot of things behind it. I mean, they can see that's, oh, that's a cool thing, or that's a cool thing, or that's a rough thing, or that's not a really nice thing. Bad or good, they can maybe judge that, maybe to a degree, based on what they've seen. But once you meet the individual, you yourself could potentially sell an idea better by being able to communicate that with your visual information, you know? So being in a classroom and being in front of people to be able to explain your work, you can't get that anywhere else, right? I probably droned on way too long there, but I hope that's somewhat, of an idea, so like that gives you a thought as to how a school can have greater benefit. Question earlier was, do I have a strong ability to visualize images and plan compositions in mind's eye? I have no idea. When I say I have no idea, what I mean by this is that in context to other people, I don't know again, because I think there are people out there that can do it better than me. Do I think I can do it in a competent level? Yeah. Is it strong? It gets stronger, but am I able to visualize? Yeah, to some degree. Is it an exact picture? No, not necessarily. Do I plan compositions? Not necessarily. It kind of comes to fruition as I do it. The camera is thought about more, if anything else. But it's constantly fluctuating based on the situation and the image that I'm drawing. Some things are much more apparent and more obvious. Other ones take a lot more focus and thought. Like, this is a difficult shot to draw. Two figures arm wrestling is really hard to do. Again, I'm drawing that right now. Two figures, two guys arm wrestling. They're more like mechanized and stuff like that. And that was one of the exercises that you guys should also try. If you're here talking with me, if you're like working or maybe just looking for some place to hang out, you can draw with us. What should you draw? Try this. Try to draw two guys arm wrestling. It's a training exercise I do in my classes. So, when do you think is the right time to jump into learning design? I have a basic understanding of form and perspective, but I'm not sure if I should start learning design now. Well, if you have a curiosity to it, then do it now, right? How do you know when you're going to be ready? How do you know when it's then to make that transition, right? Is there a moment when somebody should tell you? I certainly don't think so. Is there going to be some kind of visual image that you create by saying, okay, now I'm ready to do this? Like, what does that mean? Like, what image could tell you that, right? It's all based on the drive and the interest that they have, having the curiosity to go find out. And that can happen very early on, There's something that should come first, of course, but there's no reason why you can't put the two things together, fundamental and design, as you are working on the fundamental stuff. So I wanted to establish his face a little bit. Question from Gamer Crashes. I'm a huge fan of Mecha, but I find it really complicated to draw. Do you have any suggestions? And from Bulgaria, welcome. In terms of mechanics and stuff like this, think about looking at actual articulation, mechanics of things in the real world first. So for instance, like construction machines, tools, actual robotics, right? As inspiration of how those elements are brought together. By knowing how it works in the real world, you're going to start to find a way to apply it to the fantasy world. And in the fantasy world, what's the key difference? Well, you're creating something that is more stylized, potentially. Things that are obviously not necessarily true in terms of how they would run because of either power sources or because of materials. Things that don't exist. So that's the element of fantasy, right? We can get away with those things like that. But by still pulling from the reality of the world, you can, like I said, gain a sense of almost a valid sense of its use because it has ties to things that are real. So people believe it more in a way, But yeah, stuff like that's going to be crucial, looking at the mechanics of the real world. From there, interpretation by looking at biology as well too. So mechanics and biology are essentially one and the same. One is made of materials of plastics and metals, other one is just flesh and bone, but in terms of the concept of how things would work, they're not really that different. A muscle, right, that is there to extend and contract joints is a piston, right, in hydraulics in a machine, as you have then the material of the bone as a frame where it could be used for metal. So the exercises are then by taking the organic and turning it into mechanical is one of the exercises. Take a human arm and find a way to look for as a mechanical structure. What kind of joints are they? Is it a pivot joint, a rotational joint, a ball and socket, saddle joint? What are those? So learn actual physiology and also articulation and movement within the human body, or any animal, honestly. I was reading the comment from Sharky about the UFC fight. Yeah. I agree with you too. On the art side, do you have any advice for studying better? I feel like I don't know how I should be better going about it and bettering myself outside of my university studies. Well, at the end of the day, you kind of have to also stick with it. If you're looking for a faster result, it's not going to happen. There's no shortcut here. And there's nothing I could say that's going to necessarily make you believe that, because it comes into your sight as you go through it. I can just give you warning signs or advices or things that I've gone through, but at the end of the day, that's just my transition of things that I've done. There's no way for you to actually have understanding of how that applies to what you want to do. It's just an example. That's what's possible. And I know that examples are very necessary and helpful as well too, but still, I think it's very also important that you stick with it, with what you're going through right now. If you're in the university studies, that's what you should be doing, really, just being in the environment of actually working with the like-minded people. Now, given enough time, through maturity and also more exposure to the information, you'll start to find out whether or not that's really working or not. Based on potentially more research, seeing what other kinds of schools are out there, meeting more people, finding out what they're going through, and realizing, hey, the place I'm going at right now is not giving me what I need. And you got to be able to make that change and adaptation as you learn more information. Right now, you lack information, so the only thing you can do is keep attempting the things you're doing. So I don't know what university you're going to, so I have no opinion about that. But what you've gone through so far, if you're, let's say, 2 years in, 3 years in, by that point, hopefully you have a good idea whether or not that place is giving you what you need. But you shouldn't just give up on it so easily. If you're there for 1 year, it's like, this is not what I want. Well, you need a bit more time than that. But this is where then you talk to more students that are there, that might be seniors, talk to the administration, and find out what's possible. But any school, like I said, is no guarantee. And just because you do hear, let's say, thoughts or opinions in certain schools by saying, oh, this is the place you have to go to, that doesn't mean that your experience at that place will be just as good. You might have actually a worse experience in the university you're at, wherever you are going. So the idea is to formulate your own opinion by trial and error. You got to go just have your own opinion by experience. Stick with it and keep doing it. Let's see. Do I like the Pasadena area and art center? Yeah, I like it a lot. I've been around art center or Pasadena since 2001. It's gone through a lot of changes. I'm moving back to Pasadena actually this year, so. All right, I'm gonna put his other leg, and it'll be hidden, so you won't really see it. I'm gonna keep focusing on this area. Just kind of lined everything up right now. Just wanted to make sure I got everything in place. Here's the zoomed out version. I'm gonna start having him like stuff popping off there and there. I'm gonna push more details right now to the focusing area in this part. Do you use detail in the form as a way to convey depth and composition? No. Details don't really do that. I guess, if you're talking about depth, like composition, not really. I would use shapes for that, or value structures. To convey depth, you could, because things that are closer to you can potentially convey a lot more information and detail, where things further away from you can potentially do less. So in sense of like depth, you could potentially do that. But let's say if you have a single figure, we can control it through focal point, like where there's information of focus, I would use detail for that. But for depth, I would make sure I first have the camera and the perspective for that first. Even if there's a lot of detailed information throughout the entire image or illustration, through the use of things like perspective or shape language and how that kind of line weight, value, those kind of things can definitely convey depth better. But it's a combination of all those things. I have to make sure to turn the music down a little bit because I don't want to get flagged on YouTube if it does catch it. Let's see. Anybody or any tips you can give for someone who wants to be a character designer? Well, I think a lot of it is about being able to know character, right? I think even sometimes writing a little bit helps quite a bit. So being able to invoke your character is a part of visualization, being a part of who that person is, knowing the character from the inside out. Where do they come from? How do they grow up? Who are they? What's their function? Why are they the way they are, right? So to be able to take the place in the mind of the character, to understand like how would that person dress, if they have this role, how well will they do their job, how do they carry themselves, how would they walk, how would they speak. You might think, but how does that have anything to do with character design visually? Well, it can, because based on all those small little quirks, the visual pose, right, the things that you're dressing the person in or the character in, the place where that person comes from, a certain culture, the age of the individual, all those elements can definitely add to the visual information of the design. If you think it's just about how well you draw the anatomy, that's just a piece of the puzzle, which within a large picture is just a part of it, right? So there's so much more there. So in terms of tips, it's not always just on how well you draw anatomy of things. It is about how do you visualize and imagine the character, right? Second hardest thing to draw, in my experience, large landscapes, especially when you have, a large amount of information. It's a big balancing act, and it's very easy to kind of lose track of things, and all of a sudden you're doing things you don't want to. Okay, let's start to punch in some darks now. I'm going to get rid of this pen because this is a drier one. I'm just going to get a fresh one and start knocking in some small details here and there. I'm going to push my line weight around this guy here a bit more. These are all like little bits and mechanical structures and pieces coming off of his skin, like little installs, part of the skeletal frame. Small little indications like that. It doesn't really actually show specific details, but more like indications of things like that exist on his body. Let's see, a couple of the questions. Indiana Broad asks, how did you adjust your routine once you got your first industry job? I just broke in and love it, but I feared my portfolio will stagnate. Well, I didn't establish a very strong routine when I started working also. When you work, you work. That's your primary focus in your day-to-day. You don't think about any of the things because you're trying to do such a good job on your first opportunity. So that sets as priority, and anything else around that is definitely on the back seat, This is where you kind of have to let it ride and focus on the things where your mind is really going to. Don't fight against it. You could worry at night, staying up, not sleeping, thinking of, oh my God, my portfolio is going to suck into the future. Or if I don't work on my stuff now, I'm going to stagnate. That could be a worry that's in your brain. It'll seep in and it'll stay with you night after night. And you got to be able to, like I said, be able to prioritize your thoughts and energies and spots that are more important in the moment. So if you love your job right now, that is what you should be emphasizing your focus on. And that's where your energy should be going. Perform that as best you can, right? Don't worry about the whole stagnation just yet. You have other forms of learning going on at the moment. The learning about being able to work in a studio, knowing how to engage with the people, knowing how to work with an art director, being able to meet deadlines, right? Knowing a process, a pipeline, whatever company you're working for. So the learning comes from that part at the moment, and that's not you stagnating, that's still growing. I would stay there. And once you have a certain amount of time built in, it's important that, yeah, you might want to recognize that it's important that you always reestablish a connection to the things that you want to do for yourself or through fundamentals, and you are going to want to revisit it. But it's a reality check that has to happen once in a while, and you got to remind yourself at times. But in this situation, honestly, I would just focus on your work, your day-to-day job. Come home and rest. Honestly, focus on things you want to do, hobby-wise or interest-wise. It doesn't have to always be driven to an intention of like, I gotta work on things for my portfolio. Go home and relax and have fun and do things you want to do. Chat with people, and if you have a lot of time, then yeah, go ahead and work on the things you want to work on. But at the same time, in this moment and currently of your career building, your first step, revel in the fact that you've actually broken. Enjoy that you're there, as you said, and be there for the moment. Just be there in the present. You know. So, question here is that question earlier. Experience aphantasia, a complete lack of inner visual recall or visualization ability. Do you happen to know any artists that experience something like this? I've been looking for someone who may have any advice in the realm of with the process of conceptualizing and planning. I haven't. Simple as that. I haven't. That doesn't mean I can't give you advice based on my thoughts on what I would do in that situation. It's not necessarily an answer, of course, and I'm sure you have your own ways of doing certain things when it comes to this potential workaround. And I wouldn't really call it a problem. I would call it more of your situation and being able to use it to then your strength. Anything that can be seen as a negative in the moment can be always turned around as a positive at some point, whether it's a mental thing, physical thing, whatever the case is. It's only because you haven't necessarily given enough time to really experience that in a setting in which you have to use it for something else, right? In the moment, you know what it is. I'm unable to do this. Okay, well, what workaround can you build, whether through training, whether through a certain environment, through people, and being able to open up new channels to reformat yourself a little bit, to be able to adapt, because that's never going to go away. It'll be a part of you. It is who you are. It's how you think. It's how you are able to create. And maybe it's not through visual recall or visualization in general. Maybe it's more reactionary. Things that you see, things that people are telling you to do, you're able to react on and do to a very high level, you know? Now, if that's not something you don't want, if you actually want to be someone who's able to just visualize, or at least has that as a strength per se, again, the only thing we can do is attempt to try and exercises in training formats to be able to increase that muscle use, right? But like I said, that's not going to be an answer because you're in your situation or case, that may not be even an option. So of course, yeah, searching out people, which I'm sure you are, that might have a similar situation is definitely going to be crucial. And I would keep looking. You may never find really that person that's going through the same thing you are. I mean, we all seek that, right? Individuals that we are able to resonate with because we have a lot of similarities of thoughts and experiences and such. And because of it, it makes you feel less alone, you know, in this situation. So you got to keep searching for it. But at the end of the day, there's, you know, that's not guaranteed that you're going to find that. And what if you are going through all of this on your own? What do you do in that situation? You know, it's like you can't just hide inside your room and think it's just going to be okay. I'm sure you realize that as well. If you're, being an adult and mature about it, you got to face it head on. First things first is that you got to just embrace it. That's just who you are, and that's how you actually work. Find the strength in other things that you have, right? Because even though you might want to use it in this situation of like, I want to be able to visualize and conceptualize work. Well, what if you can't? You know, well, where else can I apply my skill sets then? You know, life throws things at you, and you're going to be able to do certain things where other people, where you may not be able to, where other people can. But again, it doesn't make you necessarily weaker. It doesn't make you less than. It just means that you are just different, and difference is good. Because if we have differences, we have different outcomes, and different outcome promotes growth. So searching for that, again, connection, but also continuing to find ways of adapting, and seeing if you're able to, coerce and train those aspects as you mature. Because I don't know what your age is right now. I mean, you could be someone who's just starting. If that's the situation, I would say it's too early to know anything. I'm not saying that you're young or it's too early in that sense. I'm saying that not enough time has passed for you to really get a sense of it. So you have to give it some time and patience. I'm sure you're very aware, and I'm sure you're mature enough to recognize and be critical in your thinking behind it. But now it comes into making sure that you just give it the time to nurture and we can't rush it. Your growth and learning will be very different than others. Some people will grow much faster, and you might even account that as a part of your inability and your weakness, which is not really going to be the case. It's just people learn differently. Everybody can get to the same point eventually. It just takes some people longer than others, but it doesn't mean you can't get there. But if you have the patience to do so, and if you love it really that much, it won't take. It doesn't matter then how long it'll take. So hopefully you have that same sense of commitment that other people may have. I don't know if it's anywhere close in terms of your thinking, but I don't want to drone on to this again more, but let's move on. Blank. Sorry, I'm way up in the scroll right now, so let's see. I got accepted at SVA, Savannah College of Art. You'll be entering this fall and semester. Any suggestions on how I should spend my next few months? Enjoy it. Again, same kind of deal. I know that everybody's always worried about, like, I'm starting this new job. I'm going to this new school. What do I got to do to take advantage of this thing? Like, what do I got to do to start right? Because they're so worried about the first step. If you don't take the right first step, you feel like you're going to mess up the entire thing and you're game over kind of thing, right? But that's not the case. The first step in life, there's no linear path after that. It's a constant adjustment and teeter-tottering one direction to another one. There's no right choice or wrong choice. It's just a choice you make and you learn from it. So I know people would argue with that sometimes by saying, well, there can be a bad choice, maybe a financial thing, a health thing. Well, those are common sense and given things, right? But in terms of like an experience, in this situation of, like, let's say a school, just jump head in and just have fun with meeting new people and being able to get education and being able to draw and create and do whatever you want for storytelling, if that's the situation. But being able to explore the possibilities of what's out there in the kind of field you want to work in. It should be an invigorating and new experience that should entice you to keep pushing harder and want you to actually seek out more information. So I wouldn't go in there with a worry mindset. Not to say that being cautious or hesitant in the beginning is not a bad thing. Through that cautionary kind of feeling, you're able to kind of center yourself in position with the right environment, So you don't want to just accept everything. You want to be somewhat critical in some aspects, but it's not like you want to block it out completely. Filter information that's enough to gauge what's going on, but definitely don't focus too narrow on the one specific thing that you think you have to focus on either. Just take that step. Have I heard of the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design? I have not. I wouldn't have any opinion about it, unfortunately. Sorry, I'm going to adjust my chair. Let me keep moving on this thing. Two guys arm wrestling with mechanical arms, and this guy's going to be starting to break up here a little bit. Just putting a bit more strength of detail, line weight on the guy on the left. These are all like gears and wires and indications of like mechanical work on his body. This guy's going to be a lot more worked on in terms of like machinery parts. This guy just has one arm. Well, from what you can tell visually. But anyways, thank you guys for hanging out for a little bit, and conversations like these are interesting to think about, and hopefully it's a opportunity for you guys to explore it between each other as well too. If anybody can support each other in terms of comments, things that you guys are going through, similarities of mindsets, it's good to always connect in some way. So use that opportunity being here. Let's see, do you have any advice, tips for someone who wants to go into world building? Well, it's one of those cases where world building can be quite overwhelming. I wouldn't recommend it for someone who's just beginning their skill sets because there's just so much to balance and think about. When it comes to the world building, I will say one key thing that's the most important thing, which is consistency, right? Consistency of being able to build the world and how it unifies that world. What makes it work? What kind of world is it? So you got to think of it from big picture and kind of get down to the small stuff eventually. But there's a lot of things to think about. A world building is not just about here's a character and here's where this character comes from. It's more than this, of course. It's about even the actual biological balance between that world and the how that civilization or even the group of people that you're trying to develop as a character potentially is a part of it or is against it. What is the balance in this situation? There's no storyline, right? There's no arc of a story. There's no beginning, middle, and end. This is a world you're trying to develop from the ground up. We have to understand the rules of how the world works. When you set up rules, a story can be potentially built around it. Did I take the vaccine yet? No, I don't think it's going to happen for a while. I have no idea even when. I don't even know where to look in terms of like what I would be able to do to sign up for it. I haven't looked at all. I'm in no rush, honestly. I'll get it when it's more readily available. I'll let the people that need it get it first. Will I get it? Eventually. I would like to be able to travel this year, so I'm pretty sure I'll need that. Maybe some kind of like weird passport card that tells people I got the vaccine, as the world becomes a lot more uh, overly ruled, documents and stuff like this. Scary a little bit, but it's the reality. What do I think about Kim Jong-gi? He's amazing. I mean, what else is there to say? The guy's a prodigy in terms of what he does, and he's been doing that for practically all his life. So, nothing else to mention, because I'm pretty sure everyone here is very well aware of it. But yeah, the guy's awesome. Will probably be remembered as one of the best in terms of being able to freeform draw in the world of the industry of what we do, entertainment arts. Let's see, question here, Casual Gamer saying, I've been having trouble committing to drawing during quarantine. Any advice on how to build consistency? I understand that the environment situation today creates, that pitfall where as you fall into it, it's so hard to climb out. Whether it's apathy or it's like the physical nature of being tired, not being able to connect to people or get outside as much, and depending on where you are and location wise, it's worse or better. Or just even the strain and stress of the constant, barrage of information and things that are going around you that are potentially very negative, that can strain. It just makes you worry constantly. It makes you feel very stressed that you have no control over it, and it affects everyone on this planet practically. So when it's to that gravity and level, when it's something that we as in our current generation has not faced at all, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. And so when there's no sense of like direction or control, or no sense of like even leadership at times, you're not really quite sure how you're supposed to react to it. Most of the time people react through stress, and in that stress they turn to things. I would hope that what you turn to is a positive thing that can help you gain, and you're able to kind of direct that energy and make it something that can be turned into something very positive, where the energy that is very negative at first can be also used for something quite destructive for other people, and I hope that wouldn't be the case. But here, if we're just talking about, I know that's much more than what maybe you're asking about. If it's just about being able to just commit to your day-to-day activities of things like being creative and drawing, how do you build that consistency towards it? For me, I can say that, well, I just do this every day, and I kind of build. Well, again, for someone who's been doing this for quite a long while, the answers and things I can reply to you on are quite easy for me to say. Even things like, well, I would recommend, hey, go online and go use your social media, to connect to Instagram. But it's not so easy, And you might think, well, I don't have enough followers, or why would anybody want to listen to me, or this or that or that. You can say a bunch of things that go against the things I'm advising, which I understand those worries, because those questions or those concerns are legitimate and things I've asked myself. Why would anybody want to listen to me? Why are you guys in here right now with me at all? It's because you have this many followers. What does that matter? There are other people out there that have double or triple the amount of followers that I have. That doesn't mean anything. It's just a number. And out of those people, I mean, how many of them are really here? And then from there, it's like, I mean, going back to the idea of like the question of, I'm not sure if I'm good enough. Well, of course you're not. If you were the best, then your world environment would be very quite different. I am not the best. I'm doing the best I can, and I'm gaining traction. I'm given affordances and opportunities, but I'm still learning so much, and there's still so much for me to be able to do. But if I think that way, where it's like, man, well, I'm not good enough yet though to do the things I'm doing now in front of you guys, well, then I would never start. So I think using things like outside platforms, connecting to people, being able to build a network and community is still crucial. And that's what this kind of is as well, where like I can reach out and be like, hey, I'm just doing a live stream. Anybody could be in here. I would still do this if one person was in here right now, right? Because this is just something I do every day anyways. Draw, or be creative in some other outlet, or just be interested in certain hobbies. So I'd still be doing this. So it's not about how much response I get in terms of like likes or followers and stuff like this, because I'm just here. I mean, that question comes up, and that's how I'm responding to it. So again, everybody here they could leave, and if just you were here, I'm not gonna sign off and like, oh, there's not enough people. Sorry, I'm not gonna do this anymore. It's not gonna be like that. So the mental mindset approach to it has to be somewhat different. You got to be able to do this because it's something you really want to do, and I'm sure you do, right? I'm sure you really want to commit and you want to be able to actually create and draw, but there's something there that might be potentially holding you back. There's a lot of factors, like I said, the whole situation of the world that could be a part of it. Well, what do I do in that situation then? What can you do? The only thing you can do is turn to people you know, turn to the things you love to do, right? And fall in love with those things deeper. And so there's nothing else out there that's in your way to hold you back on those things. I mean, no one in this world is telling you no, that you're not allowed to do things you're doing. So the only person that's telling you that is yourself. And you got to be able to overcome you, which is going to be the hardest battle at first. But it does start off by having enough support, the right environment, the right things that you want to pursue, and having those directions. Whether it comes from a class, or whether it comes from some sort of online community, or whether through family support systems, whatever it may be. But if you're just sitting there by yourself, you say, well, I don't have anybody. I have no friends. I have no family. I got nothing. I was like, I'm sorry. It's unfortunate. And there's nothing I can really do in that situation for you. I can say that I'm glad you're here. You can talk to us in this part, right? So if you're not drawing right now, well, then you're not using the time properly again. Because you could say, I want to commit to drawing. I can't seem to build a consistency. Well, here I am. I was on last Monday. You can join at least once a week and draw right now. So if you're not drawing now, then what are you doing? Are you just sitting there listening, or are you doing something else? If you are, maybe start drawing. Let's see, a couple more questions. What is the greatest place I have traveled to? Ooh. I've been to so many places, and each place has given me so much in terms of like perspective of life, of people, of cultures, the appreciation, of understanding the richness what humans can give. We see so much negativity, but when you're actually out there and reading the real people, and not just like reading about it or seeing news articles about it or reading things online about it, we're actually there. It's a different experience because everybody has opinions about certain groups of people or certain cultures or certain countries or whatever the case is. But you got to be there. So for me, I mean, of course, one that stands out was probably one of my first travels that I ever did out of the country. I was 24 years old, the first time I ever traveled outside the country. And I had graduated Art Center. It was my friends, me, Aaron Lamonic, my friend Izzy Madrano, another friend of ours named Kevin Blanchard, and myself. The four of us, we decided to travel together. And my friend Kevin, his father had a place and lived out in Tahiti. Yeah, pretty crazy place to go for your first time, right? But we traveled to Tahiti together. And we stayed with his dad, and we had a place to stay for it. So cost-wise, it was just, airplane ticket and food. So I was like, oh, you know what? That's affordable. We'll do that. So the four of us left, and again, it was for a couple of us our first times out of the country internationally. So to travel to this new place and see so much stuff that, again, for us is so unrecognizable. The weather, oh my God, I still remember that feeling of getting off the airplane in Tahiti. It's like walking into a wall of water. The humidity was so severe. Nothing I ever felt before. Growing up in the West Coast and different parts of the East side, not in Florida or anything like this, but not really feeling that kind of humidity for a long time was very jarring. But then of course the food there, the people, and we were painting and drawing pretty much every day. We were walking around different parts of the cities and such like that. We took a ferry out to one of the little islands, and we happened to come across a tattoo festival, and it was all outdoors under big canopies and stuff like that, like huts and such. It was really amazing, seeing the traditional kind of Polynesian tattoo work going on over there. So that was a big part of exposing me to the world a little bit, and I really fell in love with the Polynesian cultures. So Tahiti was the first place I went to, but a lot of the other islands, not a lot of them. I didn't go anywhere else really. I've been to New Zealand, really. That's about it. but I've met many people from different parts of the island, Samoans and Tongans and Fijians and whatnot, and all amazing people. Um, I remember that one experience of we were at the beach. It was this white sand beach, and we were all painting, and this couple came by, and they're French Polynesians, right, Tahitians, and they were speaking to me in French, and I didn't understand. I was like, "Oh, I'm just painting," and they started speaking English, saying they recognized that I was American, and they were just talking about the art they was doing and asking questions. It was just one of those cases where it was the first time I really had like an actual conversation with someone, and that was not in America. It was just really interesting. I was so young. Jack the Undying is asking, mental health can take a lot of time out of someone's day. In your experience, is it possible to maintain a professional career with heavier mental illnesses? I don't see why not. I'm not going to say it would be easy. I think a part of it is making sure that your ability to be open, to communicate to people, is a big aspect of being successful, with your clients, your art directors, and not to say you're using it as a crutch. Of course, it wouldn't be that case, right? What you are dealing with is what you're dealing with, and that is who you are. As I said earlier, in certain cases, those things that you may seem from other people's perspectives as weaknesses don't have to be that way. But I know that can refrain you possibly to be as effective professionally or as consistent as you may like to be, And I don't know what some of the things you might be dealing with are, or you're just asking the question to it. And I don't need to know. That's the thing that you're going through, and it's only based on if you want to share. I would never want to, put anybody on pressure to be able to actually say, oh, this is actually what it is. Because everyone has their own personal things that they have to go through. But either way, at the end of the day, for that, I do believe that people can work in the industry even in those situations. Because again, like I said, anybody here has the opportunities. Well, certain situations of industries, some can have their own difficulties in terms of like social structure and standards and stuff like that, and biases, right? But that's the world as it is. But in that situation, I think making sure that you have a very strong tie to people that you know, especially if you work in the industry, knowing friends or people you've already networked with that are helping to get you in there is a big part of it. So if you have a very strong and positive environment around you, I mean, there's no reason why you can't succeed, right? But it's for the people that just don't know. It's not their fault necessarily. Like, how could they know unless you were to tell them? But and you can't assume that they should just understand everything either. And that's just the reality of the way it goes. But hopefully they're open to be able to listen and to learn and to recognize, and not to just bend over backwards for you, but to support, right? I don't know, it's just a thought. But I do believe you can. Any films or TV shows you've enjoyed watching recently? Let's see. I was just watching. I don't know why I was just thinking of something, but it kind of fell in my head. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos recently, more of just like reviews on films and stuff like this. But I did watch WandaVision recently, and somebody asked about that earlier, and it was great. But I really like watching films that I just know. I like rewatching old movies over and over again. What did I watch? Oh, it was True Grit. It's not an old film, but I rewatched that one. I really love the Coen brothers. They do a great stuff. And I liked it. I like True Grit a lot, actually. Let's see if the other questions. Well, you can't ask the question of why you're crazy. You are what you are, whether you say you're crazy or not. I think everybody has a form of crazy. To what level? I think it's all based on the eye, your perspective. But I can understand, I'm sure, the difficulty of that. But you know what? You gotta kind of lift your head up a little bit and recognize that everyone has a lot of their own struggles. And I can understand that you can say, well, it's not the same, as like what we're going through, what I'm going through. It's like, well, I can't really say anything else. I have no other opinion because I haven't had any of those kind of not really constraints, not the right word, but I guess difficulties in life in a way. It always makes it sound like I've gone through it very easily, and it hasn't. The things I've experienced on my own perspective have been difficult. Of my own youth and upbringing, and the stuff I've gone through Everyone's difficulties are their own difficulties, you know, and everybody has them. We can't necessarily compare and gauge of those things, but I can recognize that what you are going through is going to be very hard, and I don't have any right to tell you what I think it should be done. But I'm just saying, based on an opinion of based on your question, is it possible to be able to work in the industry yet, you know, being in the position you're in? I think so. If I didn't, I don't know. I'm always in the thought of like, there's always a way to problem solve it. There's always a way to adapt. And if I didn't think that way, then I would think that in terms of my position as well too, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing either, because maybe the things I've gone through are not as difficult. But like I said, everyone has their own difficulties. Yeah. So, you know, the stuff Jack is talking about is medical depressions. You know, stuff like medication is kind of normal, and there's a high bar for quality and work ethic, and no matter one's personal struggles, there's an expected standard. Yeah, of course, and that sometimes I believe I may not be able to consistently meet in the future. I understand, but I think that's also a common feeling for most people, even here right now. You know, because that would be definitely a thought that I had as I was working in the industry. As I first started out of school, I mean, I thought I was nowhere near ready to meet the standards of what an industry or studio was looking for. And a lot of those kind of thoughts also came from the fact that I wasn't hired out of school. You know, I graduated art center, applied for work, I wasn't getting anything. So of course my thoughts were, well, shoot, you know, I'm not good enough. And if I'm not getting hired for it, and I can't seem to back it up, like, what do I do in that situation? You know, it's like, will I ever be able to actually meet that standard in the first place then, if I can't do it now? But of course, you know, those eventually in time are remedied based on opportunity, based on chance, based on network, based on people, which then gave me those opportunities. Through work and then being able to adapt in those situations, I was able to, you know, apply that and actually fit into the industry well enough. And even then, looking back on it, and even now, I mean, I'm nowhere near as good to meet some of the expectations of standards still, in my opinion. But it all depends on like what you're looking at in context to like the field or what kind of work or what kind of industry you want to go for. If I wanted to work in like film, a lot of my stuff doesn't apply. So would I meet the standard of what a film industry is looking for? No, because it's not really what I do. So I think another part of it is being able to find out what your strengths are, and I understand that. Well, you know, in the beginning, wouldn't it be really hard to stick to that because you got to work for a certain industry? Well, yeah, and that's a hard transition to make. But I think most people will have definitely the thoughts that you're talking about at the moment. Yeah, I think the whole idea of sharing and not being afraid to reach out to people, I think is a part of it. Because, you know, as also as most people, I'm sure, commonly feel, we don't want to be a burden to others. You know, we don't want to feel like we have to resort to a dependency of others. You want to be able to stand on your 2 feet. And I think it's a common concern that I think all young people have as they grow older, because you're so dependent of, you know, at first, to, let's say, your parents, if you had, you know, someone like that to support, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you actually were able to start off very young where you were just by yourself, you know, and that's another situation as well too. But still, as when you're a kid, you have to, you know, turn to somebody, whether good or bad. But yeah, that first step of making that change, or at least being able to stand up for yourself, is quite a doozy. But man, it's so individual and so unique to everyone that I think a good way to look at it is that the things that you could go through in the moment can seem like it's going to be almost so minimal of a chance of being able to make it to that part, you know? But the way I always look at it, again, I'm trying to put myself in a position to always imagine and visualize always another outcome. You know, even though your brain might go there first, a way to think about it is that, well, okay, if that's possible based on what I'm thinking, which could very much be true, what are some of the other possibilities? And if you can't see it that way, then I think it would be much harder, because there's no reason why there isn't a possibility that things that you'll pursue at some point 10 years down the line, you won't be in a position that is doing stuff better than me. And you could be, right now, you could be like scoffing, whatever. That's not going to be possible. But I think that right there is it. Why not? It's saying, well, because of this and this and this. It's like, but you don't know. It's like, it hasn't been written, And if you're saying, well, I'm aware of it now, and if I'm able to ask those questions currently, and if I'm open to, be able to understand and try to pursue those things, and I think that's a big part of it, Exactly. Jobs are hard. Yeah, absolutely. They are. When you're trying to satisfy others' needs, again, I won't lie. And I'm not going to try to, bullshit you or put a fantasy up in some other kind of way. It's not going to be easy. There's a high potential chance it may not work. But is that going to make you give up? I would hope not. What I would hope it does is it actually encourages you to work harder. What do you think? What do you do with old artworks or collections of originals, Phil sketchbooks? They get piled under the bed or under the couch, as they are right now. Somewhere over there. I have sketchbooks from old art center days and sketchbooks from demos from classes piled up high. Did you ever do an all-nighter at Art Center? The Art Center campus. Oh, I mean, how could you not? I think any school you go to, you're going to pull an all-nighter at some point. And at Art Center, we pulled many. A little bit too many. Yeah, usually my sketchbooks have a year on them, just for the year. I mean, I think in terms of all-nighter pulls, how many did I do the most? I think the most I ever pulled all-nighters of was sometime in I think it was in my 5th or 6th term or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I was about 2 or 3 years in Art Center. But man, I had 3 or 4 classes that were back to back to back. And they're all super heavy load, studio classes, painting classes specifically. I must have pulled 3 nighters, all-nighters, straight. No sleep. I remember the feeling of it. You feel like you're buzzing. Like you hear a buzzing noise in your head. You feel really light. Flashes of light can happen in your eyes. This is where you get kind of the hallucinations and stuff. Stuff like that happens. Physical pains, I didn't really experience, but definitely was all mostly visual. Oh, there you go, man. Good on you. Where can you meet you in person? Right now, nowhere, because I'm not going anywhere. But into the future, potentially in some events I'll be, a part of, hopefully. Which, in the last couple of years, I've been doing many around the world. Depends on where you are. If you plan to travel to the States, obviously coming to California would be the best situation. I do a lot of different kinds of expos and shows. Things like Comic-Con in San Diego is still one of the bigger ones I used to do. This year's been canceled, so I'm hoping next year I'll go to it as an actual physical event. Besides that, there was the other show that happened this last year, which was a Lightbox event, which happened to be really quite good. Then, of course, I do a lot of workshops all over the world. Was that the 2019 Jack the Undying? That was the first event, obviously, 2019, so it had to be. Yeah, I'm sure it was a very good event. This is where, again, connecting with people is a huge part of growth, um, encouragement, confirmation, but also confidence. Anyways, let me zoom out a little bit more here now. I want to start to have like things popping off of him. Maybe some effects like sparks and off of his joint as this guy starts to fall apart. Bottom part of the leg I'm not really going to touch. I'm going to leave those as they are. Put a lot more emphasis of contrast right in the arms and right in this area. Thought about doing some watercolor, but I might leave this because I feel like with watercolor on top of that, I mean, it's not going to look bad, but I don't think it's necessary. Unless people really want to see it, then maybe I'll consider it. But my thoughts are, I don't think I need to do it. I want to put some like sound effects in there, like pop noises. Very comic graphic novel styling, pop and cracks. Snap, crackle, and pop. I want to put those in there. With the shaky lines to give it that extra little touch of jitteriness. Yep, I'm in a relationship. Let's see what else. The Wolf Life drawing was killer. I didn't get to go to it, but the guy who runs it was a friend of mine, Manu Carrasco. Awesome animal artist as well too. He was running that workshop with the wolf and also the golden eagle. Manu and I are the ones that he and I are the ones that travel together quite a bit. I'm a part of his the nonprofit organization, the Expedition Arts Group. So as artists together, we bring up awareness of animal conservation through the drawings and the explorations of the travels that we do all around the world. And so we did the Africa trip together with a couple other artists. We do a lot of trips to Yellowstone, documenting, filming, photographing, and drawing. We just enjoy the outdoors as well. Where do I decide to place my black masses? So inside shadow shapes or inside areas where least light might occupy. I can also use it to help separate some details. A lot of it is also sometimes intuition. I just like it there. It's all taste. So it's a combination of all those things. Light to also detail maximum focal point areas to then also things like aesthetics. Based on aesthetics built by having a taste from looking at other artists' work, right? This is actually almost done. Maybe I will put some watercolor on this because we've only been going, how long? Hour and a half, so not as long as I thought. We're just gonna go maybe half an hour more. In half an hour, I think I could do some watercolor on this here, and I can get some nice little washes on this. Screen tone would work really well on this actually, which is why even like a gray wash would be great. If I do put watercolor on this, it's not going to be very saturated. I might do more of a monotone or more desaturated pass on it. But yeah, screen tone would be great. I was in entertainment design concept back in Art Center. No, entertainment design track didn't exist at Art Center when I was there. So we were just illustration. That was it. So in illustration, you could take entertainment design classes that existed, but there was no track for entertainment at the time. So we kind of had to find the classes as we went along. Do I meditate? No. Or read some kind of spiritual books? I do read some books. Back in like Art Center days, I used to read this guy a lot actually. His name is Jiddu Krishnamurti. He's not any kind of like guru or anything like that, and I don't follow that kind of stuff. But I just liked his opinions and how he spoke about things. He was just a really good conversationalist. So if you watch any of his YouTube videos, they're like videos that he would have that's like big meetings and stuff like that with people. People would ask questions, he would just talk about it essentially. I always liked his thoughts on things. I always liked his opinions and his ways of wording stuff. I don't listen to him as a belief system. I don't listen to him as a philosophy. I just listen to him as a form of exploring a thought and a question. Jiddu Krishnamurti was someone. Explored a lot of his concepts on living and dying. I had a lot of interest in that aspect of mortality and death. Not for the what do they call that? Not for the gruesome aspect for it. I just found it fascinating as a thought. I think it's because I'm so aware of that, and from my experiences of people, around me and whatnot. Are there any local conservatories that you would recommend? I make a list of charities to donate my comms to. Well, actually, I don't have a list on me right now. There were a few that I had. There was one I donated to recently. I have to find the website again. I can't remember the top of my head though, because I had saved it somewhere else in a bookmark. If you go to the expeditionarts I want to say .com, but if you just type in Google Expedition Arts, the website should come up for our group. And I believe they might list out some of their conservation groups that we work for. One of them was for like a rhino group in Africa, but I can't remember exactly the names of some of them right now. Do I plan to do more digital drawing live streams soon? I haven't done one in a while. It's been like months if I've done one. I have done them. I just don't know if people respond to it as the same compared to like me drawing live like this. I think it's because people like to actually see the hand in place there. Where with digital, watching a cursor move around and draw like this, I just don't know how it's as engaging, maybe. But I think a lot of it is just based on interest, If people want to see it, I'd consider it more in the future. Did I form an opinion on life after death? Not necessarily. I formed a thought on how to take action in the present and not worry about the after effect of it. Like what happens after the whole thing. That never came into mind, and nor does it now either. I'll deal with it when you gotta deal with it. But before that, you might as well enjoy the very moment of it. I think a big part of his thoughts were also the idea of not having dependency on others. The idea that there's really no one else you can turn to, and the only person that can help you is you. People, I think, feel so guilty when it comes to focusing on only things you want to pursue, because there's so many other people you want to help potentially, family or friends or whatever the case is. There could be other reasons, potentially. But for me, it's a case of that, where I do want to take care of family and friends and stuff like this. And I do also sometimes feel guilt by it, that I'm not doing enough because of it, as I think some people would. But I think that's being a part of human, we just worry a lot. Alright, let's turn to the watercolor. The watercolor I'm going to use is my Schmink watercolor set. I'm going to bring in some of my water brushes, and I have some napkins over here that I just dab on. Thankfully I filled up my water brushes. I didn't fully anticipate if I would do a water demo right now, or a watercolor situation, but thankfully I filled them just in case. Yeah, no problem, Jack, if that's your name. Let's see. We're going to go into more of a slight desaturated wash on this. I don't want to make it too vibrant and crazy on this at the moment. Destiny asks, what kind of music do we play when I draw? It's so all over the place. I have different kind of playlists that I create. Sometimes I like things that are very old-timey. I love folk music, actually. But I also really enjoy things like electronic stuff. I also really enjoy certain decades, 70s, 80s. I enjoy that a lot too. I really also like hip hop. I even like certain types of country, especially if it's more like the kind of folk country. I also like traditional, tribal kind of music, like from those kind of countries. Again, I'm all over the place when it comes to stuff like that. All right, let me wipe this down. I'm just making a mud of a mess right now. I'm just trying to wet this to clear off. All right, let's go to the skin tones first. There's a lot of areas where mechanical parts are. Let's just bring a bit of skin tone in. I'm going to take some of the paint that's already here. And this paper is like tissue paper, paper towel. It's so absorbent. It'll buckle pretty well, but as it absorbs it, dries out, it'll flatten out. Saturation is hard to keep on this paper because it soaks in all the paint that it doesn't really keep. So I have to work on top of this a little bit, but I have to also be careful too. But here, let me zoom in a little bit too as well. You'll start to see the way the paint sits on top of the surface of this thing. At first, it sits on top. Oh, actually, before I do this, I just remembered. Because of the ink sitting on this paper, this is not fully dry just yet, okay? The ink is still drying because the ink, as it's been absorbed to the paper, hasn't fully completely dried out. So in the actual paper fibers, the ink is still wet. So it hasn't set properly just yet. So I'm going to use my heat gun. So it's going to be a little bit noisy for a second, but I need to heat this. I always remember to forget this part because sometimes I'll work on this paper and I forget that, and I'll apply watercolor and it picks up that ink. And I just saw a bit of that right now. Thankfully, I didn't go over too much of it in big washes, or I would have potentially ruined it. So I'm going to hit the heat gun. Pretty good. Yeah, this is a heat gun, not a hair dryer. So it's not recommended that I would ask you guys to use this, but I use it because it's much faster. So instead of sitting there with a hair dryer. But you have to be very mindful, so you don't want to burn the paper, of course. So that's the thing, Litable. This is not hot pressed paper. It's not hot pressed paper. This is like a rag paper, fibrous paper. Am I busy nowadays? That's an understatement. I teach 7 classes in a term. I teach Monday through Saturday, sometimes 2 classes in a day. I am also working on books of my own publishing. So right now I plan to work on my next comic in the next month or so. The Dynamic Bible, the new one that I've created, I have a sequel to that coming out this year as well too. The classes are a huge aspect of my time at the moment. Freelance jobs, nothing right now just yet. Hopefully later in the part of the year. I used to. I've taught at Art Center for 10 years. Not anymore. I left Art Center at the spring of last year when the quarantine hit. Yeah, I miss drawing on the chalkboard also. In my classes at Art Center, I would always work on the chalkboard. I haven't drawn on the chalkboard in a very long time. Most of the classes I teach right now are online, so everything is all digital, which is fine, but I do miss the chalkboard. I have one on my own. It's right here behind me. You guys can probably see it right there. That's my chalkboard. But I don't have any necessity for it right now. I don't, draw on it for myself at the moment. So it's just there. I used to use it for like demos and classes and whatnot, but I don't need it right now. Actually, let me zoom back in. Sorry. So you can see a bit better what's going on. Hopefully it won't reflect too much light on this thing. Sylvia's asking a question, is what ink do I put in my fountain pens? I use an ink called, let's see if I have it on me here. It's called platinum carbon ink. That's what it's called. With a hairdryer, a few more minutes, not that much longer. Thanks for being a part of the class in CGMA. For me, I use Asian bows, so Korean and Mongolian bows. It's made of usually fiberglass. I would love to get one in horn, but I use Mongolian bows right now. So I use a thumb draw, not the Mediterranean draw. Now, looks like we have people coming in here. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate it. We're just doing a quick watercolor demo at the moment. So those of you that are still joining in right now, we had a drawing we're doing of an arm wrestling of 2 guys. And for people that have or want to do a certain exercise with me, I ask people to draw with me. the exercise and the theme was arm wrestling because it's quite challenging. As an exercise of drawing, two figures brought together, especially on something more of this kind of format, is quite difficult due to a certain situation of things like scale, camera, pose. Yeah, so quite difficult stuff. So we went in there with straight ink. We're using watercolor right now to kind of drop things in. Sorry, there's a bit of shine in here, so I'm going to lift the paper up a little bit. Let me bring in my there we go. I had a little armrest so I can put down an angle. I'll keep my watercolor tin right here. Yeah, a thumb draw for archery is where you would take the string and you'll pull it on the inside of your thumb. So the string would go, what can I use? Here's my rubber band. So if this is the actual string, you'd actually hook it on your thumb like that. You use your index finger to pull the string out in this manner, which you'd release. And so the bow sits on your right hand, on the right side, where a Mediterranean draw goes on your left side. But a thumb draw, the Mongolian draw, the archery for horseback, goes on the right side. So you pull your bow in this manner, like that. So you have to build a lot of, you gotta get used to the pressure on your thumb right there, which is why I use rings as well too. So, but it's for horseback drawing. So the index finger basically puts a load onto the arrow, so it fixes it to the bow. But the weight of the bow of the arrow, I'm sorry, the string itself goes in your thumb. You torque a little bit, just a slight, to put the index finger with a bit of pressure for the arrow to hold. Because people wonder, it's like, well, how come the arrow doesn't fall off? You know, when you're holding it on your right side, because as you're pulling it, as you twist a little bit on the index finger, it presses the arrow against the bow. It was super weird for me to use the thumb draw because I never shot that way before either. You know, in the time that I was researching, you know, archery and stuff like that. My friend Manu, I was talking about, there's a lot of archery stuff as well, so we would talk about it constantly. So I wanted to explore it more myself. But I got into more like the Asian, you know, influence of archery from the Mongols to China to Korea as well too. So there's a lot of history there in archery when it comes to Asia, pole and stuff like that. Ouch, yeah, that sucks. Yeah, smacking against your forearm is terrible. I've been hit a couple times already, even recently. This is from a recent smack. Does holding your pen matter? Yeah, it does actually, Bruno. Like when you're holding the pen to draw, in my classes at arts or dynamic sketching, I'm always recommending people in the beginning to draw more vertically like this, you know? The problem is as you're drawing more vertically, you have more contact to the page to draw with a flatter, I guess a better flow of ink. The problem is you can't see where you're going because your hand's in the way. So holding it at more of an angle, you're able to see a clear distance of view. The problem again from this is that without full contact to the page, the ink flow is not very good. This is where there has to be a bit of a compromise of an angle, but also the position of where your hand is also very important as well. So when I'm drawing, I don't tend to hold the pen at the very end of the nib like this. And this is due to the fact that, again, it's all about control right now. So you're gripping the control of it, you're trying to get that fine line, so holding it at a close end of the nib will create a lot of stiff lines. So I hold it at a bit more of a distance from the midpoint. I don't want to hold it from the way of the back because, again, I have no control, right? Super gestural. So I want to put it right in the middle where I have a little bit of flexibility and movement, yet maintain pressure as well. But that's just me. The movie, have I seen War of the Arrows? I have not. I will definitely check it out though. I think I recognize the name because I know there was a movie about archers and stuff like that from a Korean film, but I haven't seen it for sure. Let me zoom in a little bit more here. So once in a while I'm going to dab the brush and just move the paint around, let it blend into it. Would you say learning human anatomy before shading and rendering? Yes, absolutely. What made you decide to stream so late? No reason. I was gonna draw. I was playing, early today. I had to drop off a U-Haul truck because I was moving some stuff, and then came home. I had a mentorship class. From there, I actually was shooting my bow for about an hour or hour or two in my backyard. As I finished that, grabbed some food, and it was getting later and later, and I started playing games. So I was playing my PlayStation 5. I was playing my basketball game. Played that for about maybe 2 hours. And then it was getting later. It's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to draw now. So here I am. So in the day, I did quite a bit. Worked, moved, played games, shot my bow, and now I'm live streaming. Tomorrow is a full day. Got 2 classes. Ends up being quite long. Which is why I don't stream on Tuesdays, because my day's packed full. So I got to get up tomorrow kind of early. And then the classes run about 3 hours typically, but they go much longer because of feedback. Sometimes they go for like 4 or 5 hours. Yeah. So anyway, let's go into the armor sets here, the actual mechanics, and bring those up a little bit. I'm going to mix a little bit of that skin tone pinkish. I'm going to actually put in it here. A little bit of mix of that, but I'm going to bring in a bit of the cool and well to kind of like neutralize it slightly. And just moving the paint around a little bit. Again, just washes. The main focus of this is that the drawing is what's the most important. This watercolor is there for just support. I think the lighting coming directly in front of them. That's why I'm going to have a bit of highlight right on the arm right here. I put some color saturation on a few bits and pieces of the arm itself for either material call out or more for just decals and things like this. Well, yeah, with where I'm shooting in my backyard, it's actually faced against the fence, but also against the wall, which is high enough for me to shoot. so there's actually like a brick wall right there. But I also do have an actual stopping net mesh. So but the place I'm moving to will have a much bigger backyard. I have about 10,000 square feet. So I'm going to set up an area where it's better. But usually I'm trying to be as careful as I can. Because of course it's true. Accidents can happen. Bring it down a little bit. I'm going to go into this guy's hair. You even see with the way I hold my water brush, it's pretty far back. I don't go like this. For one thing, you can't see what's going on, so. Let's see, so I just missed a question here from Rexy. You messed up your wrist last year. Was in hyperfocus mode for 4 hours while drawing digitally, and I got out of it. I realized I was clutching my pen way too tight. I had to peel my hand off one finger at a time. Yeah, my wrist was angry for me for a week. Absolutely, I was very aware of my wrist, trying to warm up. Okay, so yeah, it's very important that you do so. Sounds like a lot of what Harris is saying about the shooting the arrow straight up. I think that's what a lot of young boys would do when they're kids. Well, Mega Kill is actually also right too. Like a lot of the stuff I post on like Instagram or do live streams on, like when people see my sketchbooks in person, they always say to me, "It's like, man, this doesn't look anything like what I saw in the pictures." Like, it's because it's not the same, you know, the color or the line or the details just don't match up. I mean, you're looking at a video right now. It's only 1080p. It's not even 4K, so it's not like the highest resolution either, too. So it's not going to give you the best image quality. But it is what it is. This is not really about the image quality. This is more about the experience of hanging out and chatting and Trying to stay sane in a way, right? What's my favorite thumb ring, glove, and why for archery? I'm actually using a couple different ones. I have one ring that's a Mongolian type, one that's a Ottoman type, and one that's a Korean bow or a Korean ring. And each of them are just regular rings with a tab on it, which are okay. The ones I'm getting are from a company called Custom Thumb Rings, and they're made of like resin or no plastics. So they're okay. They're super light and they protect well enough. I really want to get one in metal though. I feel like it might actually be better. I feel like it kind of it spins around, it snaps in the finger. I do have little leather inserts for more of a tighter fit, but I'm actually really liking the Korean thumb ring a lot. It has the male one version to it. It actually has a little tab we can pull on. It can hurt the thumb a little bit if it rattles, but so far I've actually liked it a lot. Yeah, I do FC's creative asking about preference of sailor pens. Do you keep a variety of nibs, or do you limit those to just a few? I like their consistency and light balance. It's just a fair investment for each additional one, considering that they don't sell nibs separately. Yeah, so I only really get one type of nib throughout most of my fountain pens, and it's just the F size. I have several 20, 30 fountain pens, but every single one of them are all the same size, F. I don't prefer any of the sizes. I can get a lot of range out of just that one size. This right here is my sailor. No, I'm sorry, this is not sailor. This is the pilot. They both look the same. This one right here is a falcon nib. So it's its own particular thing. This one's super flexible. I don't know if it'll write right now. Let me see. No, it's out of ink. Oh, there it goes. A little bit. I saw a little bit of it. So it has a lot of flex. Yeah. The Pilot. This is the Pilot Custom 912. I wouldn't recommend it for beginners. It's kind of spendy. But if you're a professional artist who's investing in pens and drawing, I can't recommend a better pen. For its price point, this is about. It ranges. It depends on what you do for customization. I've customized the crap out of this thing, so this one actually cost me up to about $400. This pen right here, but it can be starting at $200. Jay Cho Choi is asking about color. You know, as a beginner, is watercolor a good place to start? I don't know. It's not a forgiving medium. It's actually quite difficult to manage as an actual painting tool because it's actually quite spontaneous in what it does. But would I recommend this over digital? I mean, to be honest with you, any tool you start with, combination of both. You know, use analog tools, traditional tools, and digital tools. You shouldn't just side from one or the other. Learn both while you're doing them. See if you can actually marry the different techniques from one, medium to the other one. Let's throw a little bit of flashes of color in there. Little tubes and accents are going to be like oranges and yellows on this guy. Question from Power Avocado. When you draw digitally, do you use a drawing tablet or a drawing tablet with a screen? What is your opinion about them? I use a Cintiq, which is a drawing screen, and I like them a lot. I think as a professional artist who works mainly digital for the industry, it's a standard and necessity in your business. For someone who's a student, I would say an entry-level one is always welcome. Even if you don't get a drawing tablet screen, getting the actual just tablet itself should be more than enough. I'd rather invest in a better computer and just get a tablet instead of paying thousands of dollars on a drawing screen. But then you can also buy much cheaper versions like the Huyons and XP pens. They all offer cheaper price points. Wacom also has a 16-inch one, which is like $400 or $300. So there are better options these days now. But yeah, I think they're great in terms of just as a professional tool. As a student, like I said, just be mindful of the fact that it shouldn't be your go-to for everything you do. It's just something that's nice to pick up to learn as you go, because in the industry of entertainment design, it is a standard of practice. So is getting used to things like Photoshop and digital and all that kind of stuff. It is a necessity. But honestly, if you were a student, I'd prefer you to go to the iPad and Procreate. I think it's a much better option. If you're only looking to just draw and paint with it, you know. Have I ever built one of those Transformer kits? I have not. I mostly build Gundam kits. We have a student here. Tammy, welcome. Field trips from dynamic sketching. Yeah, I miss them too. Miss going out to those places a lot. For my classes, we would normally go to locations to draw an observation. In LA, we actually have a lot of places to go visit. Typical places like the zoo or museums, and we would draw things like animals to vehicles, props of various types. Right now, I've only done a simple wash. I'm not done yet. I have a couple layers of things to do here, so. No, I do not have any problems with the carbon black ink, which is a question I'm getting about fountain pen inks. The platinum carbon ink, if you let it sit for a very long period of time, then you might have a few issues. This Falcon pen that I have right now has that ink. This has been sitting in this pen, I want to say, for a good 2 months, actually. So I actually haven't been taking care of it, and it works just fine. It's actually was, you can see it actually drawing. I wouldn't recommend it, but I also know that the ink is not going to actually ruin the pen. It's a formula designed for fountain pens, so, but it's still good to actually wash it out. You know, once a couple months, if anything, at least. I always recommend the Lamy, Ruxy, the Lamy fountain pen, Lamy Safari. That's always my recommendation. It's a cheaper price point. It works really well. It handles like a tank. The thing, it's very robust. I have one that I bought during Art Center days. I still own it today. It works just fine. If you take care of it, it could be a lifelong tool. The things I've customized on the nib, it was more for flexibility. So it's a Falcon nib that's already really soft, and I've added some notches onto the side of this thing. You'll actually see it on the actual nib right here. If I can focus it, put it on paper. So you can see the flex, or the divots on that part, which creates a less material, and it flexes out even more. So it's a very soft nib on this one. Well, because a dip pen is absolutely cumbersome to carry on location. I don't think I want to have a bottle of ink and dip it while I'm drawing on location somewhere. Fountain pen is mobile, and it holds more ink for a very long period of time. And I'm also a collector. And when you might say it's pricey, imagine how much money you spent on throwaway plastic pens over your lifetime of drawing. With a single fountain pen that you buy, let's say it is a couple $100, and you actually keep it for a very long time, and you know, you hold on to it for a very long time, it actually works really, really well. Let's see, Mr. Bucket says, will you be doing another stretch of classes after this first 8-week stretch? I will be in the future. Probably starting around May is when I'll be doing it. Registration will begin probably around April or so, because my classes right now are still running, and we'll be finishing at the middle of March. So I'm hoping around April is when the next registration will be. So next class sessions will begin most likely in May. That's my thought so far. We'll see. Let me use actually some more cools on the other guy on the left for some of the accent pieces here. I learned watercolor by just trying and feeling, but I love what I'm doing. It's good. Yeah, watercolor is one of those cases where you have to actually really feel it out. There is, of course, formulas and method and techniques for a lot of those things, but a lot of the times you have to let the watercolor do its thing too, which I mentioned that last time. Um, it can be finicky, it can be difficult in its own ways, but you struggle mixing colors, yeah. Well, color mixing is a class you should really take. Color theory classes, value classes, that can be married into different mediums because color is such a difficult, aspect of what we do in painting. It's really about light, but color saturations, mixing, all that kind of stuff, dramatically important. Any tips on where to learn about colors? Well, again, classes online would be the best way to go. Um, you can look at books if you want to, but the problem with books is that as it gives you the pages of things of lesson, it's not the same as someone actually in front of you mixing the paints in front of you, or seeing actual physical light being shown on still objects or something like this, and painting from life. Let's go down to the pants and give them a bit more of a fill down here. Does Safari offer anything with flex though? Not really, no. Yeah, they're entry level. They can be a little bit stiff. They're not as flexible. But if you're looking for any sort of flex, I mean, honestly, the Pilot and Sailor pens are really, really good. And yes, they are a bit more expensive than the Lamys. But again, like I said, if you are serious about actually getting into fountain pens, and if you take care of it, it'll last you a very, very a lifelong time, And so, in the moment, it's quite expensive. It seems ludicrous to spend that much money on it. But at the same time, again, if you're going to be treating it as an actual tool that you use all the time, then it's worth the cost, in my opinion. Let's see. Let's scroll down a little bit here with some of the additional questions. James Gurney's book, someone asked about pseudo mantis. Yeah, it's a good one. Are pens better than, I don't know, liners? Like liner tools, like pen liners? No, they're about the same. It's just a different construction. Felt tip pen, liner pens are just as good in terms of ink, but again, they're one-use plastic. That's the only reason why I use fountain pens, because I only have to buy it once, and I can use it again over and over again. Where a felt tip pen or a liner pen, when it dies, you throw it away, and you have to buy another one. So you can imagine how many I've gone through in my lifetime of drawing, thousands of pens, and each one of them costs what, $2-3 a pop? So I probably spent thousands of dollars on pens that have just gone to waste, or at least in terms of like plastic waste. So for me, it's about the reusability also, right? Tammy is saying you're waiting until the pandemic is over until I take a color class at CDA. Yeah, the CDA is a school called the Concept Design Academy in Pasadena. Pasadena has several schools: Brainstorm, Concept Design Academy, and of course the colleges out here. It's great for fundamental stuff for sure. Let's keep going on here a little bit more. The light is still starting to reflect, so I'm going to shift it up a little bit here, see if I can get it to reflect less. This is why you can't trust the camera, because what you're seeing is not exactly what I'm seeing. Let's go into the table, actually. I'm going to zoom out a bit. My favorite Asian snack? I used to really like the shrimp ones. I don't eat those anymore. I actually don't really eat snacks, honestly. I'm not a big snack person. I'll have it once in a while. But, again, I don't even have like a bag of chips in my place. I'm more of a drink guy. Not a snacky person. It's in Burbank, yeah, Destiny. But honestly, I just say LA area or Pasadena. They're only like 10 minutes away. Ball pen, I use Zebra ball pens. Online classes I recommend, mine, maybe. But also the CGMA, and there are many other schools out there. CGMA, Schoolism, all these places. Tons of other places. It's true, Mega Kill. There are some that can be disassembled, but eventually that felt tip nib will be grounded down. It's just the nature of the material. So it's not metal like fountain pens. So it may last maybe double the lifetime of a standard, but eventually you will have to replace it. I even have this kind, which is the Euchre's felt tip pen. This is also a felt tip on the nib on this one here. And this is a converter on the inside, like a fountain pen. So I can refill it. I can use it for a long time. But eventually, this felt tip nib will get grounded away. So I have to replace it. Yeah, but again, thank you guys for showing up and hanging out. For those of you that are still here, that's great. If you're heading out, hopefully I'll catch you next time. The next time I'll do an art stream like this one will most likely be next week on Monday. This Friday I'll probably do another hangout session, cards and coffee. Maybe. I'm running out of cards to open. I've been opening up so many of them. But I might just hang out to chat a little bit here and there. Who knows? Maybe I'll do another drawing version of it. But Fridays and Mondays is when I will typically be on live, if you want to hang out and chat. Question is, how do you know how much detail to put in your drawings in relation to the size of your sketch? I always have problems with over detailing or failing to draw certain details because they're so small. Yeah, I just can't figure out which details I should not draw, right? And that's actually a very, very difficult aspect of drawing. Scale control, but then how much detail you go into depending on that scale. So if your drawing is relatively smaller, you got to be able to recognize how much indication you can fill in, and you don't want to over detail it. So that question is that concern is very sounded. But that's also a part of where learning happens, through trial and error. So once you actually produce a sketch or a drawing, and you're able to register and recognize like how much you've pushed, and you can then make the choices. Do I need to put more or less based on that size? And more than likely, as you said, you have a difficulty of over detailing. So more than likely you're doing too much. But I think the hardest part is, well, what don't I draw? And that's based on then situation of your decision making. That's all it is. Based on your visual, you choosing what you want to indicate and then how you indicate it is based on you filtering that information of detail. I can't tell you, go for this part, this part, this part. I mean, I can, but that's me telling you based on my interpretation. But eventually, if you see something that you haven't drawn before, you're the one that has to make those choices, right? So then experience is a big part of that. Let's put some color on the table here. What's my drink? It varies dramatically. I'm trying to cut down on sugar. That's a big part of it too, but it's hard to. I do like the boba drinks and stuff like that. Those are great. And certain sodas I'll drink once in a while. I'm not a huge soda drinker. Teas I enjoy. Coffee once in a while. Alcohol whenever I can. Usually whiskeys or bourbons. I'm not a huge beer drinker. I only drink beer when I'm with people. So I would never drink beers on my own. Whiskeys and bourbons I can drink by myself. But I only have a little bit at a time. Do you have any recommendations on desk lamps? Mine creates a glare on your paper. Well, I think it's more about the type of light, Sternzo's. So, Sternzo. Look at the type of bulbs you're going for. So again, more of like white lights are going to be good. I would avoid like really warm lights or cool lights. Natural light is what you want. In terms of like brightnesses of things, you want to go for something that does have enough brightness to it, but also distance. If your lamp is really close to your paper, it's going to bleach out everything. So put it to a distance above you or away from you. So having clamps on the desk lamp is a really good one. So if you go on like Amazon, you can find like the ones like the one I'm using right now is a clamped desk lamp, but it also has a bendy neck on it. So I can actually change the color too. So I can make it warm, cool, neutral. I am actually a fan of Stallone in general. I love Over the Top. Huge fan of the Rocky series. Pretty much everything he's done, I've always enjoyed. Rambo. I am a big 80s movies fan. Let's get into the elbow pads. Those I'm gonna make more of a, let's turn them into orange. There's also the Laylap's Design Academy that teaches entertainment art, but you don't know. I've never heard of them before, Tammy. I have to look them up. Laylap's Design. Have I seen Alex Honeycutt at Home Art School's curriculum? I have not also. I'm not sure if those questions are for me or not, but sorry. I have not heard of those. Yeah, the metal nibs will slow down very slowly. They get wider. You can reshape them as well, too. And again, metal tips can be replaceable as well, but either way. You always have to replace something at some point. But then I get, like, a collection of fountain pens, and that will pretty much last me. Like the Lamy that I've had it for 20 years. I've never replaced anything on it. What time on Friday in terms of a live stream? I have no idea. It goes on when I'm free. So I usually post on my Instagram stories of when I'm going on. I don't plan a schedule for it. These live streams are based on me just wanting to do it in the moment I do it. So, and the only reason I do it is because I enjoy doing it. And if you are there, great, and I will keep doing it, and hopefully you'll catch me again at some point. So, best thing to do is just follow me on Instagram and then wait for a story post on that particular day. Usually it's going to be in the evening times on the West Coast. That's the only consistent thing, is that it's in the evening on the West Coast. Let's see. Let's look for the questions here. Do you think for digital art that flat colors are better than fully detailed or rendered pieces? I don't think there's any good or bad or better or worse. It's just more based on what you're trying to create. What you're actually trying to generate for a certain product or client, or even for yourself. There's nothing wrong with rendered pieces, nothing wrong with flat pieces. It's all depending on what you're trying to go for intention. Mixing some dark for shadow shapes here a little bit. Now that we kind of did a general fill of many things here, I'm just going to drop in a couple of shadow bits. And let's see if we can get that reflection out of here a little bit of light. Let's see. Let's take a look at. People are asking about favorite boba shops. There's here in California, well, in Pasadena, and also different parts. Like I'm in Glendale right now, but in Pasadena, I would normally go to a place called Tea Spots, where a lot of art center people usually go actually too. From there, there's a great spot in Southern Pass, which is the. Why am I forgetting the name of it? Tomorrow. Like tomorrow, but tomorrow. Those are great guys over there. I actually like supporting them. They have good food as well too. Japanese whiskeys are very good. Absolutely. I have a bottle of it in my bag for a birthday present. People get me so much whiskey and bourbon on my birthday. People seem to assume I just drink a lot of it, but I really don't. I only drink it when I'm with people and friends. I'm not sitting by myself hitting or drinking bottles of whiskey, but people tend to get me that mainly for my birthday, so I don't know. I'm not complaining. I certainly don't mind it. I won't turn it down. It's just that that's the only thing I get. So I have bottles and bottles of whiskey and bourbon in my kitchen. They've been sitting there for a while because I just have bits of it at a time, This watercolor brush is nothing I made. No, you can get it from a company. This one's made by, well, this one in particular is made by a company based in Germany. Not Germany, Austria, I'm sorry. It's called Bosner. Boesner. Bosner. But I would actually recommend the one that's out here in LA, or I'm not LA, but in the US. The Pentel makes them. Who else makes them? Well, the Pentel ones are the best, honestly. I mean, they're all the same construction at the end of the day, made by the same manufacturers, so it doesn't really matter what company you go with. It's just that some are easier to get than others. Like, you can't find this one in the U.S., but they're made all the same. Lagavulin is actually really good, feels. That's actually one of my favorite scotch. The 16. Man, I haven't had that in a long time. I think I ran out of the bottle of that one. I've been drinking a lot more bourbon lately. I've been really enjoying Buffalo Trace. I've been hearing that's a hard one to find again, too. I also really enjoy Blanton's, but I do like single malt. It is. It's actually very fuzzy. You can see it's actually tons of like, it's almost like hair. Let's see. Super Honeycomb was great. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Yeah, there was a lot of amazing artists on it. Appreciate the support, being part of it. If you were there, for the most of the show. What time is it right now? It's almost 1 of my time. So we've gone for about 2 hours and 17 minutes. So we're just going to finish off in the last 15 minutes or so, last 10-15 minutes, just kind of doing a couple of additional marks here. I'm going to keep working on it later on to finish up and tighten everything into it. But for the moment, all the generalities of this image is done. This was an exercise. This wasn't for anything. It was just come to the live stream by saying, hey, if you want to come draw with me, we can do some arm wrestling, dudes. But it's a great training sketch because of its difficulty. So in the future, if you guys ever want to try something challenging, try something like this, like drawing 2 people or even 2 creatures or 2 machines arm wrestling, and you'll find why it's so difficult. Give it a try. I've drawn this arm wrestling shot, not this shot in particular, but the idea of the arm wrestling scene many times. Not this angle though, but I'm always trying to find a new angle every time, and it's so hard. T-Spot is near PCC, yeah. Not T-Maru, T-Moro. They're in South Pasadena, I think. I could be wrong. Maybe it is Alhambra. Sorry, now people are trying to post links on here. I gotta adjust the mod on this thing because it doesn't allow links right now, so sorry. I know that you might be trying to share legitimate links at the moment, but sometimes I get inundated with a bunch of like links and stuff like this, which I don't want to allow. But all right, last couple of bits and pieces here. Some in between spaces of the mechanical parts. It's good to hear that you actually drew them. Glad you joined. These kind of like exercise sessions I may try to do more in the future as a subject or a theme or an exercise that people can join in as well too. Drawing certain subjects or drawing certain actions or poses. Some of the stuff I did in the past were like, previous like commission work or something from my journals or books and stuff like this, but I think doing exercise is also a lot of fun as well because I want to be able to train constantly as well too. The Dynamic Bible is not out of print. It's still available. If you go to superonius.com, if you go to Liberdistry, they will have it as well. They've only just gotten their shipments in. This is why people are getting them so late. People had pre-ordered back in like December, but they had been waiting months to get it. But it's because there was a shipment delay from China because they were stuck at a harbor out there from printing in Asia. So they're just stuck on a boat for months and months. What had happened was that there were companies in China that had basically bought out all the shipping freighters, all of them. So there are many products from many companies that could not receive their items from famous clothing wear brands and even places like the Superani. They couldn't get their books, so they only just recently got them in the last month or so, and they're starting to go out. But the book is still available. Those were pre-orders. These are now the actual orders that can be fulfilled. But yeah, if you guys have interest in it, you can take a look at it. It's a collection of my, not journal, but notes on how to sketch and draw within the class I teach. And I'll produce more of these books yearly. I'm planning one book a year for the Dynamic Bible, with a plan of 5 books total. So 5-year span of this. At the end of it, at the very end, I'm planning to actually collect it into one big volume, so it'll be like a 500-page book, essentially. We'll see if that happens. How do I recommend the approach of the Dynamic Bible book? Well, of course, try to use the appropriate materials that is listed in the actual book itself. From there, follow the exercises, but also stick with them for a little bit. Don't try to jump too fast into the subjects. Stay with the initial chapter when it comes into the exercise, the form play, the fundamentals of the actual method and technique. How long? I would say, probably a good period of time. I would say, if anything else, think of it in more of filling up sketchbooks. So in a Cottonwood Art sketchbook, which is a common book we use in Art Center, that book has about 35 pages in it. And usually a student in my class at Art Center can fill 2 of those in a 14-week period. 2, minimally. So if you're able to fill, let's say, 2 of those books with all the exercises you're doing. No, I'm sorry, not 2 books. Let's say 1 book, okay? 1 book for all the exercises, the shape play, cross contouring, hatching methods, and all that practice. It's probably going to be a good amount of practice put in to be able to also then try eventually into some of the other subjects in a second book. So 1 sketchbook at least, in let's say the Cottonwood Art book, that's a 35-page book, you should be able to fill those with all the exercises. If you're rushing to get to the other thing, then you're doing it wrong, because rushing is not going to get you the right foundations and the right mindset to apply to the other stuff. As exciting as it is to draw things of, the actual visual, exercise can feel so boring at times. I have not watched Dorohedoro. I'll have to take a look at it. Thoughts on Art Center? Since you mentioned Pasadena, I mean, I've been teaching there for 10 years, and I went there myself, so I've been part of that school for a large part of my life. I have positive memories of it being there myself. Being a teacher there has been great for certain aspects. I left last year mainly because of how I felt about what they were doing, teaching online. I didn't agree with it, and also they never really asked for me back. So I just didn't. I don't know. It's just the whole situation of like how a university is dealing with this whole pandemic of their nature, and I just don't think it's been very well handled when it comes to dealing with some of the students, but also international students as well too. Mostly on that side of tuition has been the big issue. And so that's why I haven't been back since. I have no plans to. Because in the beginning of last year is when I started my own school. So I had already made the plans to do that. I was going to stay with Art Center with at least 1 class, but they kind of forced my hand. And they said, pretty much, that's it. Moving on. I gave a decade of my life into them. So I think that's enough. I think I did my part in carrying the flame, the torch of what Norm left behind. And I'm still doing it based on my own things. Norm was my mentor. He had passed away in 2010, which is why I teach what I teach. It was based on his information and things that he's gathered for the class that he taught, that I was able to do what I'm doing now. So, and that's only the reason why I'm here. Really. Can be? No. I don't know what can be at Art Center. I barely talk to anybody at Art Center in terms of like administration, instructors, maybe like 1 or 2. Administration, barely any. It's amazing. In 10 years, even like the department chair, I had 1 conversation with her once. No performance reviews, no raises, unless I asked for it. So my pay also was, I think, debatable in terms of like where it was. Let's just say this: art center was the lowest paying job I had while teaching, but it was the most investment of my personal time I gave to the people and to the school, because of my mentor. That was the only reason why I was there. I didn't care about how much money I was being paid for that place. I didn't care about what energy I had to put into it. I was there because of the legacy that was left behind, and for the people, not for the upper people, not for the administration. I didn't care about them. For the people that were going through it, because I was still on their level. Yeah, every school makes a crazy ton of money, you know, and that was another part of the problem. Again, it's expensive, and yes, that's not really the reason why I would say you shouldn't go to the place. But I'm saying that it could be dealt with better. It's still going to be expensive, but they could be a lot more transparent. Is the thing, you know. Of course, Tammy. Yeah, the debt is one of those cases that I had over my head for decades. Again, I think I posted about me paying off my student loan only a couple of years ago, and I graduated art center in 2005, and it was like 2000 and what 18 when I had paid it off. But it was a necessary evil in a way, because the things I got to do, the things that people I met, were only because of that experience. So I would do it again, no hesitation. But it's not for everybody. And no, not everybody is guaranteed, success out of it. And it does suck because of that. But that's, again, a factor of life. At least you try, and you won't have any regrets. And you got to keep moving forward and finding ways to adapt if that didn't work for you. And hopefully you are somewhere. And hopefully you are being active on being able to create and take advantage of your skill sets that you may have learned, or maintain groups and friends that you were able to make. Do you think you need a screen tablet to create good professional digital art illustration? No. You can use a regular tablet and be fine. I can draw with a regular tablet from Wacom just as good as an actual screen tablet or a screen monitor. As a European, the thought of getting in crazy amounts of debt because of studying is crazy to you. Yeah, it sounds insane for most people internationally. But then the question of, well, why do so many international people come to the US for the education, right? It is insanely expensive, but there are certain aspects about it that you can't get anywhere else. Again, certain times it's about the industry that you go to, the level of professional people that are actually a part of the actual educational system is one of the main reasons why. And is that cost worth it to actually have one-on-one, instruction with people that are a part of this industry? I would assume so. I would hope so. It was one of the reasons. Was that one of the reasons why I went to Art Center? No, it wasn't. I went because it was based on opportunity of information that I got from, let's say, people that went to Art Center. They told me about the school, what it gave, all that kind of stuff. I found out about what I really wanted to do when I got there. It is mostly because of prestige, absolutely. It's a status symbol for some people, which is unfortunate. But you know what? Those people at those schools get weeded out very fast. They stand out because they don't do the work. They won't make it. If they come from money, I mean, they'll be fine. But in terms of like a professional career, what they're going to do, no, again, no guarantee. Just because you have money. What factors should you consider when deciding where to go to study art, and would you recommend going to an art-specific school, university course? Right now, I think the situation is that you're not going to be allowed to anyways. So I'd be looking at some online educational routes for the moment. Places like CGMA, individual artists who teach, like myself, will offer classes. to expose yourself to the information, the potentials of what's out there, you know, just to like preemptively train yourself in a lot of ways. Think of it like a prep situation, prep school, right? So looking for those individual classes or systems can help you start to build a platform that if you then want to choose to go to a university, you'd be able to do so. So having engagement and of actual talks and interactions with instructors professionally and also with students, it can help you formulate an opinion. Will I provide other dynamic sketching classes from my website? Well, they'll be offered in the future soon, in May. I'm teaching classes right now, so we're done in 2 weeks. So once we finish, registration will begin in April, next session in May, springtime, session 2 for this year. I usually have about 4 sessions a year. Each session is 8 weeks long, but I might only end up doing 3 sessions this year. We'll see. But each session has about 5 different opportunities. 2 of them are for the dynamic sketching course. 1 of them is for the extension version. 1 class is a design class, and another one is mentorships. Okay, we're almost done here now. I'm kind of noodling on this thing. But anyways, let me get a little bit closer to some of this area. A little bit, just to see it. Fun to draw. Let me see if I can use this fountain pen to kind of put a couple of marks in here if it works. I find that this particular fountain pen on this paper doesn't grip well, but let's see if I can make a couple of marks. It's also being metal, it scratches into the paper a little bit, but maybe be kind of careful with it. I'm glad it's still working. I haven't been using this pen for almost 2 months, and I'm surprised it's actually still drawing with ink in there. I thought it would have dried out completely. It actually shows that it's really nice and not waterproof, but airproof. So it holds the ink inside really nicely. That's a great sign of quality. How was I able to stay up 3 days straight at Art Center? Fear. I gotta finish my work. We just stayed up. I didn't drink coffee when I was in Art Center. Maybe drank a couple of soda. You know, soda wasn't one of the things we drank. We just did it because we had to. There was no choice. It's not safe. I wouldn't recommend it, but it was a decision that we made at the time. I made at the time. And I'm pretty sure I paid for it in health, you know, for long-term effect-wise. I'm pretty sure I took a couple years off my life going through Art Center. But hey, that is a part of the risk in pursuing the things that we really want to do in life. You think, well, do I have to do something like that also? No, no one's asking you to. I did it because I wanted to. No one told me I had to do that. Oops, sorry. Do I like the South Campus in Pasadena for the Art Center? Yeah, it was fine. That's where I mostly taught at the later periods in my latter half at Art Center. The first 5 years at Art Center I taught at was mainly at the main campus. But this is before, you know, the South Campus got really big and whatnot. And then we moved to the South Campus area eventually. Which is, it didn't matter to me. I mean, it was nice being at the original campus because I always had the original room that Norm was in. So it was always very nostalgic, and it kind of harbored the energy that was there for what he did for the class. So I did miss that aspect of it quite a bit, actually. Could you give some tips for us to help discover the kind of art design field that is good fit for us? I mean, I have no idea, really. It seems like there's so many fields, if there is, and it's confusing, absolutely. And that's why it takes quite a long while going through educational systems and making a lot of friends and building a community to find out what are those things. And from there, you have to make those decisions of, you know, a choice of a risk as to what you might want to pursue. But I can't tell you what you like. You know, I can't tell you what is going to work best for you because I can't predict that. I don't know. I can tell you what are some of the things that might be out there, but in that you then have to make the choice on your own, you know. But that's the scary part, right? And that's one of the downsides right now what's going on at the moment educationally is that people are so afraid at the very young age of coming into school that they're asking for answers. Tell me what to do. Like, what should I learn? Where should I go? Again, I can't. You have to kind of find out through trial and error, and you may fail at it. It may not work out for you, and that's the risk we all take. Even the people that went to school when I was there, not all of them made it. What do they do now? I have no idea. I'm not friends with every single one of them. But a majority that I did stay friends with all made it in the industry. You know, they're leaders in what they do. But yeah, this is our last. I know some people that might be even hopping on right now. I apologize that you're hearing the news, but this will be actually our last 5 minutes. We actually just wrapped up on this image and illustration of two people arm wrestling with mechanical arm sets and machines. This guy over here on the right, kind of like crackling and popping with a bunch of bits and pieces falling off of him. But I will come back on in terms of an actual drawing session live stream next Monday. Friday, I'm going to be back on live again if I want to do cards. If I don't do cards, I might consider just moving it up where I just do art on Friday as well too. So if anyone wants to come join and draw and hang out again, Friday will be the best bet. Well, potentially. Best bet is definitely Monday, but possibility-wise, Friday. Wiley says you're learning how to draw right now, so would you recommend sticking to traditional if I only have a no-screen tablet, or does hand-eye thing actually go away and not matter after a while, even more fingers? So in that situation, I would stick with traditional, but still use your tablet at the same time, because the whole hand-eye coordination, the muscle memory being built in with whatever you're using as a medium is transferable. Okay, it works on both ends. So I'd be using both at the same time, because at Art Center I would be using both as well too. We did digital work and traditional work. Everyone is opening Pokemon cards now, but I'm still opening basketball cards and Marvel cards. I'm looking for more online if I can get them cheap. But right now the prices are going out of control. So everything I look at as a hobby is like getting expensive every time because of the quarantine. So I don't know if I can afford it just to do live streams of opening cards. Anyways, let me just zoom out one last time here. You guys can take a look at it. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Thank you again for joining for today in the session. We did, good amount of drawing and talking. It's already like 1 a.m. on my time, 1:20. This is actually not my bedtime. I actually go to sleep a little bit later than this, but I probably will go wash up and stuff like this. But anyways, we can take a quick look through the sketchbook again for people that joined late. But this sketchbook right here is my kind of open sketchbook. This is actually an open bound book, hand stitched, handmade paper. There's no cover on it. Where did I get this? I got this at a art store in somewhere in Europe. I bought this years ago and I never used it, and I started using it again. These are just studies in here. This is a study of a photograph I took at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. Just some dinosaur drawings. Vehicle drawings. This is a 1924 Miller based on a photograph that I took at a museum. More dinosaurs. Watercolor on here with ink. This sketchbook I started last year at some point, and I alternate sketchbooks throughout. So I like this one because of the paper being just rag paper. I like a lot actually. It takes the watercolor very differently than cold press. It's very absorbent, which kind of desaturates the color a little bit. Sometimes I draw like fun characters in here that I like, not for anyone else, just for me. Character studies, Sometimes I go into like brands or storylines and characters I grew up with too. I like drawing them again. There's another paper here. It's gotta be. There it is. More Batman. Astro Boy. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out, Destiny Bo. I don't know how it's gonna be. Zack Snyder to me is so in terms of a director. There's only one film I like from him, which was 300, and that's about it. I mean, Watchmen wasn't terrible. There's more insect drawings. More insect drawings, studies from life, actual insects that I have as specimens, not live, all dead. A lot of this stuff is from observation. So I have actual physical items I'm drawing from. But stuff like this is out of my head. Thank you, Limbo. Appreciate it. These are out of my head. Dinosaurs, right? Characters. This is from another live stream we did a while back, sometime last year. This is from a reference photograph that I took of a wasp that I had caught and I released. imagination drawing. Characters I'm familiar to. Again, imagination drawing. This is from that series of a game I played a couple months ago. It's from a character from Mad Max. This is a recent one I just did from the 2021. This is just now. So I'm about halfway through in this book at the moment. Close to halfway. A little bit more ago. And this is our current drawing. So again, thank you guys for hanging out. It was really fun. Next time, again, I'll see you. Hopefully we'll do more exercises of drawings, and maybe you can join me more. Questions like this are always fun to have a conversation about. I don't know if I gave the proper advice or the best advice, but it's the best advice I can give in the moment. And if you guys can use it, great. If not, hey, you know what? It's just here to, you know, have a talk about a few things, your curiosities, your thoughts, and whatnot. But if I see you guys next time, please continue to interact with each other and talk with each other and me. And I'll see you guys then. But for anything else, enjoy the rest of the week, and hopefully I'll see you at the end of it. All right, appreciate you guys. Have a good night.